our Goleta City Council meeting of February the 3rd, 2026. I got to remember to keep saying that to myself. If you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We can have roll call, council?
Yes. Councilmember Reyes Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Kiriakou.
Here.
Councilmember Kasdan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Smith.
Here.
And Mayor Perotti.
Here. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our interpreters for this evening's meeting.
Buenas noches, tenemos interpretación al español disponible. Si alguien prefiere, aquí hay auriculares. Good evening, we have interpretation into Spanish available if anybody prefers. Here we have some headsets. Thank you, gracias.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll have public forum. Anybody that would like to speak to anything that's not on our agenda this evening and pertains to this jurisdiction. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have received 2 speaker slips, and if any attendees on the Zoom webinar wish to speak to public forum, please use the raised hand feature and I will call upon you. Speaking first, Robin Cederloff, followed by Bill Woodbridge, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's so nice to be here in person, but I want to tell you, I really appreciate the continuing of Zoom because often I can't get here, and so it's nice to be able to listen in and comment if I need to. Fortunately, last week, or your last meeting, I made a big boo-boo, and I'm here today because I want to express my concern and give you some suggestions in the future about our local history. I'm really concerned that the Chumash art piece went up the valley to San Ynez. San Ynez has a fabulous museum. I give them a lot of credit and whatnot, but we don't really have a place here in Goleta to talk about our local Chumash history. And I hope in the future that we'll be able to do some things. You know, Marriott, when they came in and put the Residence Inn in, they did a fabulous job with working with the local BBCI and creating a color scheme and putting images up and having a nice dedication on their site. I would love to see some of that happening at different places. You know, coming forward, the new design for the golf course, maybe there might be a way to do something there. But I'm also looking at our wonderful Goleta Community Center. Isn't there a way that one of the rooms could be dedicated to our Chumash history so that our local residents can go there and learn a little bit, maybe have some Chumash members coming in and doing some demonstrations and whatnot. Going to San Ynez is an all-day event, and it's very expensive. So I'd love to see something happen here in Goleta. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Speaking next, Bill Woodbridge.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for hearing me. I did speak to James Kiriakou about this a week ago on Zoom, and I wanted to bring it all to all of your attention. The city of Santa Barbara recently passed a resolution, and it was confirmed last week, to freeze rents in that city until an ordinance creating a sustainable rent policy can be created and a program can be created in the city of Santa Barbara. It does not include houses and it does not include condos, but it does include, I think, most other rentals. They did confirm it last week. My concern is that we have the same problem here in Goleta. Rents have been going up, especially under the Tobes properties at 10% a year for the last 5 or 6 years. That's unsustainable. I and thousands, tens of thousands of seniors in this city are on fixed income. I'm retired, no pension. My Social Security doesn't even cover my rent, much less food, car costs, insurances, everything else. Has to come out of savings. Well, the savings are quickly dwindling, and soon I will have nothing to live on. And in the meantime, the rents go up 10% a year, and my Social Security goes up 2.8% a year. That doesn't work, especially after years and years and years of doing this. Tobes has no problem raising the rents the maximum they can on all of their properties. I lived in 2 of them. I live on Patterson Avenue now. My rent started at $1,800 a month. Now it's $2,700 a month. My Social Security is under $2,600 a month. In 4 more months, it's going to go up another $270. So the problem is a lot of seniors, including me in this town, are going to either have to leave town, if not the county, if not the state. I don't want to leave here. I can't afford to move because to rent a similar apartment in another place in town would cost me now $3,200, $3,300 a month. So I can't afford to stay there. I can't afford to move. So the option is move out of town. So as James put it humoristically, this is going to become another Monaco, a town with nothing but wealthy people and very highly paid tech people in this town. That's all that's going to be left. So I'm hoping you could copy and paste that resolution. I'm hoping you will quickly do something about this and arrive at the same resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And as you know, we can't respond because it's not on the agenda this evening. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And Madam Mayor, we have 2 hands raised on Zoom. Alejandro Gonzalez, you'll have 3 minutes, and please remember to unmute yourself.
First of all, y'all need a free bill, bitch. Free bill, bitch.
Didn't sound kosher.
I don't understand.
We have 1 more hand raised. James Poku. Would you like to continue on to James, who has his hand raised?
Yes.
Okay. James, please unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Free bill, bitch. Free bill.
And Madam Mayor, I have no more public speakers at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to amendments or adjustments to our agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just noticing my screen wasn't working, but
I
assume we'll get it fixed.
don't think any of ours was working.
No amendments, and I just have actually one short announcement for tonight. Speaking of history, which was mentioned, we have our own history, the city of Goleta. And for those of you who track this sort of thing, it was yesterday, apparently, February 2nd, our anniversary of cityhood. So 24 years as of yesterday. Just wanted to acknowledge that. It seems like just yesterday that we were celebrating the 20th, although I wasn't here yet, but I did get here just in time. I got here just in time to get a T-shirt and lots of paraphernalia. And I still am using the 20th logo on my email signature, so I'm being told by staff it's time to change that probably. So I'll wait for the 25th, and then I'll, so yeah, obviously 24th, it's exciting to remember that. On one hand, it seems like just yesterday probably for a lot of folks. On the other hand, you know, it's been a long time, and we're not a new city anymore. But we're already thinking about the 25th. That's a bigger deal. And so we have a year. I'm looking at Kelly Hoover right now. She's smiling and nodding her head. We have a year to plan for some events for the 25th a year from now. And that's all I have.
Seems like just yesterday they were cutting the cake in front of the community center in 2002.
Yeah, and also just since you brought up the community center, I think this has been mentioned before, but if you see the little plaque on the side of the community center building, it's almost 100 years old. and there's quite a history associated with the community center. And so there's probably something we can do to tie in the 100th year of the community center next year as well.
Okay, thank you.
So for our anniversary, we wait and see if the monarch comes out and sees its shadow, and then,
Okay, moving on. Consent calendar.
Yes, thank you. That is item A1, approval of the City Council meeting minutes of January 20th, 2026. A2, acceptance of the November 2025 check register. A3, agreement with Dudek for stormwater services. A4, amendment number 2 to agreement number 2025-046 with M&S Engineers, Inc. for professional services for the 2025 arterial pavement project. And A5, agreement for Goleta's 4th of July drone show light vendor and acceptance of donation of funds for the 4th of July drone light show event above $10,000.
Okay. Council wish to pull any item from consent? I'm not seeing any. Do we have any speakers for consent?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've not received speaker slips, and if any attendees on the Zoom webinar wish to speak to this item, please use the raised hand feature and I will call upon you. Madam Mayor, I'm seeing none.
Okay. Looking for a motion to approve? Consent calendar.
So moved.
second.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Thank you, council members. Reyes Martin,
Aye.
Councilmember Kiriakou,
Aye.
Councilmember Kasdan,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tempore Smith,
Yes.
and Mayor Perotti.
Aye. Let me log it in there. Uh-oh, it's not letting me.
Oh.
But I'm an aye.
Yeah, I didn't.
Sorry, I could start the voting procedure if you'd like for consent. I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay.
We all agreed. It's unanimous. Okay. Presentation?
Yes, that is item B1, fitness with racial business recognition.
Who's going to come up and say a few words about this?
What's up?
as it begins?
You need to
Yes.
Turn it on.
Oh.
That's what we have to do.
It doesn't work because it's not turned on. Okay.
But mine didn't turn
What a
on.
concept.
Oh, there we go.
We're spoiled. Everything's usually turned on and waiting for us. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Blake Markham from the City Manager's Office, here to just briefly introduce our business recognition program once again. As a reminder, this program was approved back in 2024, and since then we have recognized 2 businesses. The program is intended to highlight exceptional Goleta businesses for their notable achievements and unique contributions to the community. Recognition can be based on factors such as longevity, economic development, prosperity, sustainability, resilience, or other efforts that promote community enrichment. And honorees are given a certificate at a city council meeting, like we'll be doing tonight. They're also featured in our Monarch Press and on the business recognition page of our website. We're doing this once a quarter, so we have our form open now for any nominations, and folks are encouraged to go to the business recognition page of our website and send in nominations, and self-nominations are accepted. With
Right.
that, I pass it to you.
Thank you. Will Rachel please come up to the podium? Here, and if you'd like, we'll take some pictures, and if you'd like to say a few words, please do. But this is exciting for me because, you know, what we've done in the past is we've recognized businesses for being successful, but they're leaving. You know, we're saying goodbye and we're acknowledging their business and how long they've been here. But I thought, and my colleagues agreed, we all thought that it would be really nice to have really acknowledge and recognize the businesses that are successful and doing well and are not leaving.
Not leaving.
So, so that's how this came about, and you are our 3rd recipient. And so it's my honor to present you the City of Goleta Business Recognition Award This certificate is proudly presented to Rachel Fitness with Rachel, excuse me, for its success as a woman-owned business and dedication to enriching the lives of seniors and residents through fitness and connection. So important. Awarded on this third day of February 2026 and signed by myself and Robert Nisbet, our city manager. And thank you so much for what you do. I was just talking to a friend the other day that mentioned that she had heard about this really great place in Goleta to go and work out. And I said, where is that? And she said, it's Rachel, Fitness by Rachel. And I said, well, they're getting a recognition. That was just a coincidence that came up. I was just like, wow. So do you want to take a picture and then picture with all of us?
Thank you so much for this recognition. Really, first and foremost, thank you so much to the city of Goleta, to everyone here. I was born and raised here in Goleta, and it's been such an honor and a privilege to grow my business here in the place that I really do think of as home. So it's just lovely. Thank you so much. I also have to say thank you to my family, to my husband, and to my kid for all of your hours of unpaid labor, being voluntold to do various tasks around the studio. Thank you so much for all of that help. And being a small business owner can be fairly inconsistent in the hours that I work and a little bit chaotic with the financials. And so thank you so much for your support for all of that during those years. I also have to say a special thank you to my mother-in-law, to Janice Malloy. I would not be doing this if it were not for your encouragement and your mentorship. Thank you so much for nudging me persistently all those years ago to get into this line of work. It's really been it makes my heart so happy. So thank you for that. And finally, I have to say thank you, of course, to all of my clients, so many of whom are here tonight showing their support. You're the secret sauce that makes Fitness with Rachel unique and special, and I obviously wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of you. I absolutely love what I do, and you're the reason I am so very happy to go to work every single day. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have not received any speaker slips, and if any attendees on the webinar wish to speak, please use the raised hand feature and I will call upon you. Madam Mayor, I'm seeing none.
Okay, thank you for what you do. Okay.
That takes us to item B2, Project Connect update.
Okay, Project Connect update. You are definitely loved. Yes, Nina, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Tonight is an exciting milestone for Public Works. We're close to our 2-year anniversary of starting Project Connect, which is really exciting for us, and we're honored that we've been able to deliver the largest project in the city's history, so I think that's a great thing. Tonight we'll have our talented project manager, Melissa Angeles, presenting, and we also have our construction management team, Unico staff, here for any construction questions that may come up. So I'm going to pass it on to Melissa.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'll be sharing an update on Project Connect, beginning with a brief project overview, followed by improvements completed to date, remaining work, and our public outreach efforts. Project Connect is a combined transportation and infrastructure project located in Old Town Goleta. The project brings together the former Eckwell Street and Fowler Road Extensions project and the Hollister Avenue Bridge Replacement project, both of which had been in development for many years and were identified as the city's highest priority transportation projects. The two projects overlap along Hollister Avenue near the State Route 217 interchange. To minimize construction-related disruptions, limit lane closures, and improve overall project delivery, the city combined the projects into a single construction contract, which was awarded in December 2023. Project Connect includes construction of new and improved roadway connections, intersection and interchange improvements, and significant pedestrian and accessibility enhancements. This includes new and upgraded sidewalks, curb, gutter, and the reconstruction of curb ramps to meet current ADA accessibility standards, improving pedestrian connectivity throughout the corridor. Eckwell Street is being constructed to provide a new connection between Kellogg Avenue and Fairview Avenue and includes a roundabout at the Eckwell Street and Pine Avenue intersection. The Fowler Road project will construct sidewalk, curb, gutter, and drainage improvements along South Kellogg Avenue. At Hollister Avenue and State Route 217, 2 roundabouts will be constructed at the northbound and southbound on-ramp and off-ramp intersections to improve traffic operations and safety. Project Connect also includes the replacement of the Hollister Avenue Bridge, increasing 100-year storm capacity beneath the bridge and improving the overall hydraulic performance. San Jose Creek Channel improvements and fish passage enhancements are also included. Construction began in March of 2024. To date, approximately 2/3 of the project has been completed, with major roadway, bridge, and utility improvements substantially in place. Major milestones include completion of the Hollister Avenue Bridge, drainage improvements, realignment of Dearborn Place, sidewalk, driveway, curb and gutter improvements, including ADA-compliant curb ramp reconstruction, traffic signal upgrades, construction of the Eckwell Street roadway from Kellogg Way to Fairview Avenue, installation of roundabout raised medians at Ward Drive and Eckwell Street, construction of the Hollister Avenue Old Town interim striping project, installation of parking lot wayfinding signs in Old Town, and reconstruction of the Orange Avenue parking lot, which was added as a construction change order to leverage economies of scale and reduce overall construction costs.
That's great.
Remaining work includes construction of roundabouts at the Hollister Avenue intersections with the southbound and northbound State Route 217 ramps and at Eckwell Street and Pine Avenue. Fowler Road improvements along South Kellogg Avenue, street lighting installation, additional sidewalk, curb, and gutter work, final roadway surface treatments and striping, realignment of the State Route 217 on and off ramps at Hollister Avenue, San Jose Creek Channel improvements, and landscaping and mitigation plantings. Project completion is anticipated in spring of 2027. Public outreach efforts have included the project groundbreaking ceremony, booths at the annual Public Works Week and the State of the City, an ongoing project communications such as a dedicated webpage, email and contact channels, door hangers, mailed postcards, site signage, press and media coverage in English and Spanish, video messaging, and community support campaigns during construction. Throughout construction, the project outreach team has actively engaged the community, responding to more than 700 inquiries to date. A dedicated email address and phone number have been set up for residents and businesses to reach the project team. The project team continues regular coordination with property owners, businesses, the school districts, the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, Greater Santa Barbara Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, MTD, Caltrans, utilities, the City of Santa Barbara Airport District, UCSB, Santa Barbara County Sheriff and Fire, and emergency service providers regarding construction impacts. A public outreach plan is in place for the next traffic pattern change on Hollister Avenue when the roundabouts will become operational. This change is anticipated to occur in the spring of this year, though the schedule may change due to unforeseen construction conditions or weather impacts. Outreach for the traffic pattern change will begin approximately 2 weeks in advance and will include press releases, web page updates, electronic message signs, short instructional videos demonstrating how to use the roundabouts, and updated maps showing the new traffic patterns. Construction updates and additional outreach information are available on the project webpage. The total construction contract award is $62,746,460.70. In addition, the City Council authorized the Public Works Director to approve contract change orders as needed in an amount not to exceed $8,801,628.33. To date, $4,035,443.09 has been spent on approved change orders. The largest share of these expenditures is associated with the Hollister Avenue interim striping project, reconstruction of the Orange Avenue parking lot, accelerated work at the Hollister Avenue Bridge due to utility conflicts, and unforeseen site conditions. That concludes my presentation. Staff is available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kiriakou?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, staff, for that efficient presentation. Just like you've been efficient with the project so far. 2/3 completed. Congratulations. That's great. We're not quite two-thirds of the years that we anticipated it would take, but you're 2/3 done. That's great. My first question is about the roundabouts, and I appreciate that you're working on a communication plan, and you kind of laid out the broad contours of that. In terms of how the roundabouts are going to function, though, are the roundabouts going to functionally perform when they're ready the way they're supposed to when the project is completed, or are there going to be differences? And examples of differences might be lane striping versus maybe just some kind of simple arrows. Will the terrain, will it be fresh pavement, or will it be something rougher because you're going to do the final pavement when you do the final treatments on it? I just want to get a sense for the public of what are they going to experience when they start going through those roundabouts.
Councilmember Kiriakou, thank you for the question. So I discussed this with Melissa today, and we got notice from the contractor that there will be one lane in the eastbound direction of the roundabout, and that's because they still have to work on portions of the bridge. We still have to do the work underneath the bridge for the channel work, so they need access there, so that's why it's going to be in one lane. And then there will be 2 lanes on the westbound direction. Everything will be striped. We won't have the full fixtures of the curb and gutters at this point. And the pavement, I'm not sure if it's going to be patch pave or it's going to be a new pavement, but it'll definitely be 2 inches lower if it's a new pavement. After the project's done and we're ready to do the final pavement, we're going to do a rubber asphalt pavement.
Okay. And then I guess my follow-up question then is, so if one of the roundabouts, and I believe you said it was the eastern roundabout, the one that's closer to Dearborn Place and Kellogg Avenue, or are we talking about Ward?
Both roundabouts.
Both roundabouts are
will
going to be
have,
one lane.
yeah, one
Okay,
lane
I
in the
misheard you.
east direction and 2 lanes in the westbound direction.
Okay. So then I guess my follow-up question to that is, if you're driving towards where the first roundabout will be and you're approaching Kellogg, as of right now, you have cones that start to narrow before you get there, and it kind of closes off the bus station. Do we anticipate that those cones will be staying a while longer then, given that we're going to still be in one lane for a little bit there?
I'm not 100% sure if the cones will be there or they'll have striping, but we will have mechanisms in place that follow the California MUTCD to ensure safety. So it'll be either cones or it'll be striped.
Okay. And then one thing that also kind of stood out for me is, can you go back to the slide that had the change orders?
Yes.
You might know where I'm going with this already. So the project is 2/3 completed, and it looked like change orders, we had spent less than 50% of the money that we had put into change orders. And I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly, because I know there had been a lot of concern with the interim striping project being processed as a change order, and perhaps even some concern from some, because I believe the Orange Avenue parking lot striping and repaving was done as a change order. So I'm just wondering, it looks like we're doing pretty well on change orders so far. Do you have reason to anticipate that that's going to even out by the time the project's done just because of what's left? Or do we think there's a possibility that we might actually fall under what the authority was?
I think it's still too early to tell, especially because we're going to be doing in-creek work, so we're going to be doing some removal. So we're going to get into material we haven't seen before. These potentially could be cultural resources. So we are holding on to that change order budget as tightly as possible in the event something comes up.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have for now.
Councilmember Reyes-Martin.
Hi, thank you. I have a question about signage. So when I've been out either here, and I'm thinking of other, kind of locally known roundabouts like the Milpas and then the ones in Montecito, but even in other parts of California, I've been paying more attention as a driver, that experience. And one thing I noticed is when the signage is really good, it's pretty seamless as a driver to know what to do, where to be, depending on where you want to go. And the signage really varies. I've seen some that are, fairly large with diagrams that really show really clearly, if you're wanting to, get on a freeway on-ramp, for example, here's where you want to go. Has that been kind of thought through and decided on what kind of signage there will be for drivers? And do you look at kind of what some best practices are for the most effective and helpful signage for drivers?
Councilmember Reyes-Martin, thank you for the question. What we're going to initially do is do all striping, so we'll have arrows and kind of lane lines to show people how to move through the roundabout. And as we go through this process, it'll be a learning curve. So if we do need to add more signage, that's something we certainly can do. But we will be monitoring it throughout the whole process. So if there's anything that comes up, it's something that we can quickly change and adapt.
But right now, there's no plan for signage other than the striping on the road?
We're going to be placing yield signs, but I don't recall that we have the signage of an actual diagram of a roundabout, so I can confirm that.
Well, that will definitely be something I think to keep an eye on, because I think those can be really helpful. And I'm glad that we've got some change order money in there if we need to. But that will be good, and maybe there's a way to get some feedback from folks as they start to experience that on what kind of signage would be helpful.
I think that's probably something pretty simple for us to add. So we'll talk to the CM team to see if we can add that.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Kasdan.
Yeah, first I wanted to follow up on Councilmember Reyes-Martin's observation about especially the roundabouts, where I guess two things. We've heard a lot of concern from the bicyclists, for instance, that one member of the public kept referring to them as meat grinders, I believe was his term, which was very evocative. But the other thing, my own experience, there were I used to live in Washington, D.C., and there were roundabouts there, usually with a general on a horse in the middle of it. And roundabouts are pretty easy when it's a one-lane roundabout, but when it's a two-lane roundabout, they get a lot more challenging, and you can find yourself sort of going around and around in the roundabout trying to figure out when to get over and things like that. And I remember bringing this up when Charlie was here, and he said, well, that's an older design that they had or something like that. So I don't know if concentric circles are changed dramatically over time, but I guess where I'm going with that is if there are certain signage or other stripings or things that'll make it simple, just to keep that in mind, because my own experience, those roundabouts can get tricky for drivers. So you don't have to say anything.
Well, I was just, Councilmember Caston, thank you for the question. I was just going to add that during the time where we're adding the roundabouts into the final roundabouts, we're going to have share the road signs, but we're also going to have sharrows in the pavement. And once the roundabouts go full bore and we add all the multi-use paths, there's going to be other means of travel for the public, for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. The other thing, I didn't even realize we had added, when we added, it shows my inattentiveness, I guess, but that the Orange Avenue parking lot got added. That's awesome. I mean, that's been, yeah, because that's been kind of languishing on our CIP list for a long time. We spent a ton of money to buy the parcel, and it's, it just, I mean, there'd be other things ideally that we would do with that, but it's great that we're fixing it up. And one other observation I had, one other thought, is that for future presentations like this, that maybe we could get the folks someone from Neighborhood Services also. My thought is that part of the goal that we had with this was not just to enhance circulation and make it safer, but also to make the neighborhood, I'm talking about the lane restriping, more walkable, and actually to benefit businesses, that this would be a positive thing for the businesses as we develop it. And so I know in Neighborhood Services, they've got business support programs, and they're doing other things probably with walkability or maybe zoning, I don't know, but it might be valuable to also report what, if they hear the things we're doing to enhance the goals of the project that are not necessarily public works per se.
Well, I have some.
You're looking dubious or skeptical. No.
Well, I have some news to add to that. We're going to come back on April 7th to give an update to the Hollister interim striping. So I think all your questions will be answered.
Okay. Okay. I guess that's it. Thank you.
I have a couple quick.
If I could just jump in on it.
Sure,
I was thinking about something else, but it was related to roundabouts. So maybe that's why my face looked like that. Since I got called out on it, I will tell the anecdote. So as the question came up about the signage, and then the further question about whether 2 lanes more confusing than 1, that's where my mind was going. So there is a couple roundabouts that I use on a somewhat regular basis that are 2 lanes. But I'm not frequent enough that I know exactly what to do every time, right? I think if you use them every day, you get used to it. And so what my experience is that you get a little confused if you should use the right lane or the left lane. But if you think about it for just a second, it becomes obvious. If you're getting off at one of the earlier exits, either the first or the second exit, use the right lane. If you're getting off at the third exit, use the left lane. And what I've seen, there are signs on those double lane ones to try to help mitigate that confusion of, depending on the exit you're choosing, which lane should you. So anyway, Public Works will look at all this. That's what I was thinking about, Councilmember Caston.
Okay. Well, actually, as I was thinking about it also, Washington might be a peculiar or not a good comparison because they have so many tourists. And it might be the people, as opposed to people who regularly go through it. So, I don't know. Okay, thank you for your.
If you get confused, you just keep going around until you figure out where.
That's what my wife would do. She'd get stuck in the middle and go round and round.
My question are more about pedestrians and bicyclists. And, when we open up the roundabouts, are we going to be making sure that they understand their lane, where they're supposed to be, and the kids walking to school? There's a group of kids that walk to St. Raphael's School.
Mayor Prodi, thank you for the question. We're going to do a full media blitz once everything's installed. We're also going to do a video in-house to show how to use the roundabouts, how pedestrians can use the roundabouts, and bicyclists as well.
Okay. That's good if they have, if they're looking on the internet for, I mean, how else are we getting the information out? Are we doing anything else for those that may not be looking at social media? I mean, there are people that aren't looking at social media.
Currently, we've been doing a lot of public engagement with our outreach team, but if
Okay.
there's more that we can do, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Robert's ready to infomercial.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear, because those are two groups that have a little bit of concern about, basically, because of the 2 lanes. So that's always been my concern, or somebody that's disabled trying to get.
We've had a lot of public engagement with the school districts, so we can easily reach out to them because we are aware that a lot of kids use that route for certain schools. So we can easily reach out to them and even go to the schools and do a demonstration.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, because I am now remembering a little over 2 years ago, probably 3 years ago, because I think it was before Nina was here, but we were having a discussion, and there were some questions in that regard about the sidewalks, you might recall, and there was an explanation about how wide the sidewalks were. But at that time, I also remember that the design of it is such that if you're a cyclist, you can certainly ride through the roundabout, but there's an option as a cyclist to exit before you get to the roundabout, share the sidewalk, and then get back on. And I remember that conversation from that's the design of the one on Los Caneros too, I believe.
Right. Councilmember Carriaco.
Yeah, so I can actually add to that because I live right where the construction of the roundabouts is happening. One of the real benefits of the way the project was designed when it came to final design, after comments I remember from Councilmember Kasdan, the mayor, former Councilmember Richards, who are very concerned about bike and pedestrian safety, is those parts of the sidewalk that are right by the roundabout have been widened. So it's share the sidewalk, not just share the road. You share the sidewalk there. It's a wider sidewalk in those more impacted areas. But one of the other improvements that I really appreciated about the final design is there's little pedestrian shelters with at least some of the roundabouts. So when you're trying to cross over 2 lanes and then 2 lanes, there's actually a shelter where you can stop and pause, and it's a physical built structure. It's not just signage, it's real concrete, it's real structure. So I really appreciate that. I think in terms of outreach, one of the suggestions I would have, and I'm happy to participate in it, is actually going and talking to St. Raphael's School. And I know from having talked to them previously, they had a lot of concerns, not just about the roundabouts, but also about some of the development that's happening right across the street with so many housing units, and what would that do to traffic in that area. So I think having the conversation directly with the school would be really helpful. But then also making sure they realize that these changes are being made with safety in mind, not just those pedestrian shelters, but there's also places before you really get into the meat of the roundabouts where there's crosswalks that didn't used to exist before. When you lived in Old Town, or if you're traveling around Old Town, you never used to be able to safely cross the street at Dearborn Place. That was not something that existed. And now that is an actual crosswalk that exists. So I really like the way that our staff have incorporated the bridge project with the 217 circulation improvements with safety in mind to make these changes. And I think they were really being responsive to past and current council.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Oh, yes, just briefly, actually to follow up on your comment, I do think in terms of outreach, I'm thinking back a couple years ago when city staff did a presentation about how complicated it is that we're all receiving information in so many different ways. So I do think our television outreach, KEYT, and even, I don't know, to the extent we could use our public access channel, remain important options because we're just everybody's consuming information in so many different ways, and certainly in terms of using our own community center for outreach as well. So I just support those concerns.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. Do we have any speakers from the public?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have received 1 speaker slip. And as a reminder to those on the Zoom webinar, if you wish to speak to this item, please use the raised hand feature and I will call upon you. Speaking first, I have Barry Remus, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Well, good evening. It's great to see you again, Mayor Prodi and council members. My name is Barry Remus with Move Santa Barbara County. And first want to say happy anniversary to the Goodland, and also congratulations on Project Connect being two-thirds of the way through. But yes, get that change order money ready. And I'll tell you why. Because basically, Move is really pleased to see the progress on this. And we also want to commend the Public Works team for making the decision that you did make about the efficiencies of scale by incorporating the change order approach with the Hollister Old Town interim striping project and the Orange Avenue parking. So I think that was a job well done. We are really looking forward to the implementation of the roundabouts, not only also the extension of Eckwell and Fowler and the pedestrian and bike improvements there, as well as ADA curb. And hopefully our strong suggestion is that the Public Works and the design team are following PROAG guidelines so that curb ramps don't guide a wheelchair user diagonally into the street, but have perpendicular wherever possible. And then let's get to the roundabout. We're really excited to be able to see those and we want to not call them sidewalks. We really want to call them multi-use paths, as Director Buena mentioned before, because this is a shared path that could be both for pedestrians, ADA access, as well as bicyclists and other wheeled users who don't opt to take the lane and ride through the roundabout, but it's great that both options are going to exist. And we were really encouraged by the initial design for a 10-foot wide multi-use path and circumnavigating both roundabouts, and we really are hoping that that's still going to be the case. And we look forward to not only that safe access once the roundabouts are completed, but we really are hoping that during construction, we are still being mindful of allowing safe pedestrian and bicyclist access during the construction phase, and it's not an afterthought. 2-lane roundabouts, according to the new PROAG, the pedestrian right-of-way accessible guidelines, now allow for and call for, and a matter of fact, on the Milpas roundabout, we're soon going to see rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the crosswalks, which is really something to consider because that ensures further safety for pedestrians crossing through the roundabouts. And as well, when the implementation happens, we would wonder, definitely with a 2-lane roundabout, we highly and strongly recommend the wayfinding signage that's graphic, as Councilmember Reyes-Martin alluded to. It really does help guide all road users through the roundabouts. And also a phased approach that the city of Santa Barbara took with the Los Patos roundabout is to implement stop signs in the initial phase of the roundabout, just so that it gives people, all users, a chance to phase into the circulation element. It may not be perfect in this location, but it's something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking next, Ashley Martinez Lopez. You'll have 3 minutes, and please remember to unmute yourself. Thank you.
First of all, I'm still on the rent and stuff. And that little boy in the background in the white shirt near the door, bitch, you need to leave. You like 12 years old. Get your ass to bed. Fuck y'all on council, bitch.
Madam Mayor, I have no public speakers.
Okay, so this was just a presentation. And thank you, timely. One real quick question. Did the rain and the storm, did that set us back any, or are we kind of still on schedule here? It must have, in some degree.
Mayor Perotti, that set us back on the roundabout schedules. We were originally going to have them installed at the end of January, but because of the huge rainstorms, other subs were delayed, so we had to push it back.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. Councilmember Carriaco, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to, no questions, just want to thank staff again and just a couple of closing thoughts. I'm really pleased with the progress that's being made in terms of making Old Town safer, in terms of making Old Town work better and have better circulation. This is an important project, not just for Goleta, and not just for Old Town, but really for the region. And so I'm really proud of the work that you're doing. Your team deserves to be commended. And I also just want to say how excited I am, just how sometimes things work out. When I think about the work that's being done here, we're so close to having really a new entrance into Goleta from the east. and a wonderful way to welcome people into our city and to welcome people into Old Town and to have a sense of place in terms of that welcoming kind of landmark for the first time. And at the same time that that's happening, we have the potential on the western end to have a restored historic Barnsdall Rio Grande gas station welcoming people with an ode to our historic past on the west end. And it just seems to kind of be on track to potentially happen around the same time, potentially. And I'm just so excited to see these things all coming together, and I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next item.
Thank you. That takes us to item C1, authorization to advertise for bids for the Cathedral Oaks Road and Crib Wall Replacement Project, Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Hello and good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Michael Winnewisser, Project Manager for the Cathedral Oaks Crib Wall Project. It's my pleasure to be here back again so soon to present for you. To my right is Ms. Autumn Glazer, Assistant Public Works Director. And it's our pleasure to present this project update alongside our agenda item. Our team is excited to share how far the project has progressed. Tonight,
I'm having a hard time holding back my excitement for this, but I will try. Can you feel it? Sorry.
Tonight, I'll be providing a brief overview and update. The Cathedral Oaks Road and Crib Wall project has now been split into Phase 1 and Phase 2. I'll actually start with Phase 2, since that is the portion of the project with which we're more familiar. Phase 2 will demolish the two failing crib walls and replace them with two soldier pile soil retaining walls, as well as regrading the slope and a newly paved multipurpose path. I want to note, however, that to accomplish this work, the portion of Cathedral Oaks Road between Winchester Circle and Calle Real will need to remain closed for the duration of construction, which brings us back to Phase 1. Phase 1 is a pavement improvement project. Before closing the road to start Phase 2, we will be paving the length of Winchester Canyon Road as well as Calle Real between Cathedral Oaks and Winchester Canyon Road. The purpose of these improvements is to offset the downside of closing the road for traffic to and from Highway 101 and West Hollister Avenue. Essentially, we're improving the expected detour route. On the screen, you'll see a map identifying the project locations. Phase 1 is represented in blue and Phase 2 in green. Both phases are in the late stages of design, and we're anticipating taking Phase 1 out to bid in the spring of 2026 and Phase 2 in the summer. Construction activities for the project are anticipated to be completed by late 2027. I'd also like to emphasize our intention to provide consistent outreach throughout both phases of construction, which was highlighted in the staff report. Our team will provide consistent web page updates along with dedicated project email and dedicated phone line. We will be hosting a neighborhood open house to welcome questions and feedback. More details on the date and time of this open house will follow in the coming months. Finally, as stated in our staff report, we recommend council authorize staff to advertise a notice inviting construction bids for the Cathedral Oaks Road and Crib Wall project, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Thank you for your time. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I have also added the project contact information here for the viewing public. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, council? Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Yes, thank you. And so just to clarify, because I know I had this question, the paving work that's done will be in the detour areas. That correct? So that will happen first.
Councilmember Smith, yes, that is the purpose for the paving, is to prepare that for the detour.
Okay. And then one question I had is, that that area, I was just thinking about potential impacts. I guess I'm wondering about the role of Caltrans to the extent that that's also where the freeway exits. And just, I don't, thinking about if there is more, detour traffic through there, could there be potential for, usually there's not much backup in that area. But in any case, that just makes that intersection a little bit unusual.
We do work with Caltrans regularly, and we're in coordination almost daily for various reasons. So we would definitely give them a heads up that we have a detour taking place. When we have closed Cathedral Oaks in the past, so we have some anecdotal evidence, and it didn't back up at that location. But we would watch for that. If we started to see that, we would need to make accommodations.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Kasdan?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking for picking up my son, I'll have to go Calle Real, I think. But I guess I was curious with respect to the same idea. So when we did the lane restriping on Cathedral Oaks most recently, we had that segment that we did, and so the portion, therefore, from essentially the 101 area all the way up to, I forgot where our project started, didn't have a bike lane added in the same. Some of it had it on the north side of the street. But anyway, I guess now we're going to see a fully contiguous or fully connected bike path as a result of this restriping, going from the 101 section all the way to the high school?
The existing bike path that's currently fenced off will be reopened to the public. So it won't add bike lane or lanes in this project. So it'll just open and reconstruct the area that's been closed off for.
And that's on the north side of the street.
Correct.
So on the south side of the street, there won't be any changes? Because right now, we've added in the past, previously, in the most recent restriping, I guess it was kind of a restriping and a repaving, we added on the south side of the street a portion that was a bike path. And my concern has always been that, if somebody's bicycling along, they're unlikely to feel safe if only a portion of their path is protected or has a bike lane. So we won't be adding, therefore, any bike paths as a result of the restriping here on the south side of the street. We'll be expecting that they go on the north side of the street and then cut over and go, or something like that?
I might need your
I know that's not what this
your
project
map, but the location for the crib wall, we will not change the striping. The striping will be as is. So I think you're referring to Winchester?
Yeah.
Okay. Where there's room and space, we will add striping for a bike lane, but it will not change the infrastructure or widen the street. So if there isn't room and space, we won't be able to add it. But yes, the intent is wherever we can with the paving project, we would add striping for bike lane.
Did she take away what you were going to say?
She got it.
Councilmember Kasdan, I can add to that as a heavy cyclist user of that section. I know it very well. So as Ms. Glazer said, the project is not creating a new bike lane, but one has been closed for over 7 years due to the crib wall. That section of bike trail is a separated two-way trail. So when they open that back up, then it will be continuous, separated from traffic, all the way from the highway, all the way to the new section that we added that you're referring to, that we made it separated by putting the parked cars as a buffer. So essentially, almost all the way to the high school, you'll have a separated section where you're protected. And but on that section, there will also still be what are called Class 2 bikeways along the travel lanes. And so someone will have a choice, just like they do now, but it'll be continuous. You can either use the protected Class 1, or you can use the Class 2s, which are probably 6 feet wide, along Cathedral Oaks.
I don't want to divert the conversation, but just a clarification. This is about the crib wall, not bike paths. But so you're the Class 1 you're referring to is on the north side, and would we be then? So in other words, if we want people to go north side and then down to the south side to continue their route, then I think we just need to ensure that there's signage and stuff like that to let them know, or there's a path. I know there's like a hawk kind of thing along the way, or a light up. So anyway, it's just something to keep in mind, that if we want them to switch sides of the street, we have to kind of let them know. I was curious, the open house, what is the purpose of the open house? Just to tell people about what's coming and how it's going to be closed and how long it's going to last and so forth?
Correct, yeah. It would be another mechanism to get to the public and let them know and let them ask questions to the project team. It's something we would typically do for a number of CIP projects, especially when there are impacts to the detour. So we would do that we would do it after award of construction so that we had the contractor schedule, and that allows us to give more clear information on schedule.
Okay. Because it's fine to do, it doesn't hurt, but a lot of what you're hoping to accomplish it's kind of passive. We're not aiming to receive information from the public or anything like that. So schedules, timing, that, like flyers and emails and all social media can deliver a lot of that.
Correct, and we use all forms of communication so that we reach all users.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you. And it's very exciting, the curb wall.
It is very exciting, and I so appreciate how you repaved the path, up to the point where they can't go anymore, but then also directed people. I've seen people use that, and they understand how it works, even walkers. So thank you, I really appreciated that. And I have to tell you that I've lived down below in the canyon like almost 40 years, and that was never a road. Winchester or Cathedral Oaks was extended, and I can't remember what year, and that was just a big open field with cattle and cowboys riding on horses. So we used to all walk our babies up there and look at the cows and the cowboys. So anyway, it was. People that have lived there long enough know that it will work, to have that detour. But I will add that there's a lot more people now, there. And a lot more people have gotten smart, and they're using exit or on-ramp at Cathedral Oaks because it's less congested than Glen Annie. Right. So there is a lot more traffic. I would strongly recommend that when you're doing your outreach, you definitely outreach to the schools, because there's a lot of kids that bike to, whether it's going the other way to Elwood or going to Brandon, going to junior high school, and a lot of pedestrians too. So I think the schools, maybe I would recommend junior high, Elwood and Brandon, and Elwood and Dos Pueblos being aware, so they could send something out on their, to the parents.
Well, the good news is we meet with the schools, both school districts and any principals that would like to attend biannually, so twice a year, and then they're also invited to our quarterly utility meetings. So they actually have been notified this is coming, and we tell them every meeting, we give them a little bit more information as we get closer. So they're definitely one of our stakeholders and important partners to make sure they're aware of this project.
And I may have missed it in the report, how long do you think that phase one would be, and then phase two?
So phase one, I believe, would be, a month to 2 months. That one is the quicker of the two. Phase two, we are estimating right now, without a contractor on board, 9 months to a year of a closure. Once we have a contractor on board, they'll be able to give us their means and methods, and there may be wiggle room in that depending on which equipment they need and where, that we can shorten that. But for now, we're being conservative and saying 9 months to a year of a closure to do the full construction. And that allows them to do it faster and allows them to use all their means and methods versus us dictating. So, but we will work closely with our contractor when that time comes to come up with a plan and a lot more clear schedule on closure.
That's great. All right, thank you. Very excited it's happening. Any other questions? Do we have any public speakers?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've received one speaker slip, and if any attendees on the webinar wish to speak to this item, please use the raised hand feature and I will call upon you. Speaking first, Barry Remus, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
It's been such a while. Good evening again. If you'll indulge me, one of the things that I forgot to mention in my previous public comment to the other item is that Move Santa Barbara County, our education and encouragement team, just as we did with the Elwood Class 1 multi-use path, we are totally prepared to engage with the schools, St. Raphael for the roundabouts, to be able to take them on little walking field trips, et cetera, do presentations to really educate students about roundabout safety. And so for this, for the crib wall, it's really great, and it's been very impressive to see Public Works really attacking this and getting a jump on construction bidding. And while we realize that this item is purely about the notice for bids for construction, let us jump ahead and look at, again, while the construction work for phase two is happening and we actually employ the detour, we want to encourage Public Works to leverage your engineering prowess to seize any opportunities to be able to really ensure that bicyclists and pedestrian safety is paramount through the detour. Because we realize that on Cathedral Oaks, you're getting a lot of not only just the powerhouse cyclists that really just want to roar through the Class 2 bike lanes, like Mr. Nisbet there, but in addition, also, as the mayor mentioned, schools and children and families will be taking advantage of the detour, and especially considering that Caltrans intersection, as Mayor Pro Tem Smith mentioned, we just want to really be able to make sure that that intersection specifically, which can be kind of tricky, doesn't become more of a safety issue for pedestrians and bicyclists that are traversing through that blue zone, if you will, the detour area. So that's something that we really want to encourage to really, again, we've really been impressed with Public Works' abilities to be able to take opportunities as paving and restriping occurs, to be able to find those opportunities to be able to make bicyclist and pedestrian access even better, and not to mention ADA access as well. So we're really excited to see this happen on an accelerated rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking next, Carolyn Hill. You'll have 3 minutes.
So my name is Carolyn, but I just have like a couple questions. I have a couple things to say. So I just wanted to say, y'all need a free bill for real. I don't know why y'all changed his rent, upped his rent by $1,000.
Speaker, this is your sole warning. Speech that is irrelevant to the item and the subject matter under consideration is not permitted. So if you continue,
it's relevant to me.
If you continue with an item that's not scheduled to be heard, you will be muted.
Free bill. Free bill.
Madam Mayor, have no further public speakers on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is bill related to Willie?
Okay, Are we, that rattled me. Are we going to, what are we doing on this? We're just having a presentation, or are we voting on something? I'm sorry.
I think there's a recommendation. I'm happy to make the motion if we're ready. I move that we authorize staff to advertise a notice inviting construction bids for the Cathedral Oaks Road and Crib Wall Project Phase 1 and 2.
I will second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Please do remember to lock in your votes. Beginning with Councilmember Reyes Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Kiriako.
Aye.
Councilmember Kasdan.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Yes.
And Mayor Perotti.
Aye. Ayes
Thank you.
have it. Okay, before we move on, I think I'd like to take a 5-minute break. Okay, let's bring this meeting back to order. Read the item, please.
Thank you. That is item C2, 5-year forecast and fiscal year 2026 to 2027 budget priority setting workshop.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the public. My name is Luke Rio, City of Galida's Finance Director. And tonight's item before Council is to review a preliminary review of the 5-year forecast for our general fund and also review funding priorities for our upcoming mid-cycle budget for 26-27. So on the screen tonight is tonight's agenda. We'll be going over our budget process and timeline, which includes our current financial outlook and our general fund 5-year forecast. In addition, we'll be recapping on some fiscal issues, funding priorities, budget strategies, and seeking council feedback, but also giving council some guidance to think about as we go through the budget development process. So as a reminder, on the budget overview and process, starting first, this slide does give a quick overview of where we're at. And as you know, we do adopt a 2-year budget that was adopted back in June 2025. We are now approaching that second year, which we call the mid-cycle budget. So the key takeaway here is that this is intended to be a true-up, a chance to right-size our estimates based on actuals of that second year. It's not typically the time for a major overhaul unless there's been significant shift in council priorities or really our financial perspective. So we're actively updating numbers now. We'll continue to refine the budget based on feedback during the upcoming budget workshops that are scheduled starting here in February through May. And so that leads me to the budget development timeline. So this is just a snapshot of some of the items. And as I mentioned earlier, kicking off February 17th will be first with the city manager's office with their annual work program. And then there will also be a review of the development impact fee nexus study that'll be going in front of council for preliminary review. But then as you see during the next course of the few months, series of annual budget workshops, I did want to point out too, on April 21st, that's the tentative date for our public hearing. We'll receive our annual user fee update, but also consider updating our development impact fee rates. Some more to come. But the most important date would be, it would be 2 dates actually. May 19th, the budget workshop for operating in CIP. So you'll see the final preliminary recommended budget and then final adoption scheduled for June 16th. So the purpose of the forecast, just really want to make it very clear, this is not a budget. It is a long-term planning tool that provides a multi-year perspective on our financial health. It's based on a given set of assumptions. We do look at 3 different types of financial models, and I'll get into that in a little bit here, but the primary focus is really on the general fund, and we try to identify key areas that will need attention. And we'll continue to refine estimates as soon as, when new information does become available. So we've been in that process working with our tax consultants and also with our counterparts at the county as well. So budget principles, I just want to remind the council and the public on how the city budgets here. We do have a process, or we do follow this principle where we do match ongoing revenues with ongoing expenditures. That helps us ensure long-term stability. We have this one-time rule. We do try and match one-time revenues for that one-time cost. So that's like with your capital projects. We do, for assumptions, we do conservative estimates to minimize risk of shortfalls. But we do acknowledge that there is a potential, there is potential to have like kind of a best case scenario. But that what we do want to maintain conservative so that way we're not, overextending ourselves. We do try to have a buffer when we do balance the budget or recommend a budget. That's when, you'll see that where revenues are slightly exceeding expenditures. In previous years, we've always tried to strive about a $1 million buffer, but that's slowly been, as we program out our budget and trying to meet priorities, it's kind of, it has not exactly been at that level. And then also we try to maintain general fund reserves at or above council adopted policy level. And then we also want to remind everyone that we do prioritize the use of special revenue funds. That's either the grants or restricted taxes. So that's like gas tax, our SB1, Measure A funds, or any other funds that are eligible for that expenditure. So that way we can limit the impact on the general fund dollar. So forecast baseline and strategic alignment. So again, this forecast is going to build on our fiscal year 25-26 adopted two-year budget. We assume continued funding for what was adopted for council priorities. Again, we did evaluate 3 economic models. We have an optimistic, that's high growth, pessimistic, it's kind of that recessionary case, and then base case. And base case is what we're going to mostly focus on here. That's this moderate growth reflecting our current outlook, real world data, and also based on status quo service levels. And so really what that means is it's what we're responsible for right now today and what we've programmed in the budget, and we're not adding new staff, we're not increasing funding levels for certain programs or projects unless it's mandatory to do so. So you'll see that a reminder of like some of the major commitments we made over the course of the last year. But before we begin, just a quick update on the financial outlook. So you may recall this slide from last year. It's kind of that same message. We're really fiscally stable today, but we are constrained going forward. Either future enhancements will be required or trade-offs or some type of new revenue stream if we were to add new programs or enhance any service level. I want to really point out too, one of the main focus items and priority funding items is the train depot operations and then right-sizing the splash pad maintenance. Those were some placeholders at the time, and so we're really trying to fine-tune those estimates, and so there'll be more information coming to council on that. And then I want to really emphasize that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's really challenging economic conditions for everyone, some more than others. The city of Goleta, relative to our counterparts or other cities in the area, I think we're in a different position. We don't rely heavily on federal funds, and we also we're not looking at having to do any type of layoffs or service level cuts. We do budget very conservatively, but the trade-off is that we do have ongoing existing deferred maintenance. We do have some unfunded capital projects. So if you recall, and we'll touch on that more, because if you recall, the main focus has been on those big 6 priority projects. So then I thought it would be good to also give council another update too on the economic outlook on where the California Construction Cost Index. So this slide actually has just been updated with the most, the most recent data. Just as a few days ago, the Department of General Services from the state of California just released this, January 2026. So I included that number. It was released right after preparing our packet. So in the packet, it showed 2025 comparison. So this is looking at the most up-to-date numbers. So I just want to point out we are comparing to 2016. And just like that viral trend lately where they're saying it's feeling like 2016 again, it's definitely not the same in those numbers. You can see that we jumped up 66%. We've been up 52% since the pandemic, but however, when you look at it lately, costs are at 3%, so it's been leveling off. Costs have slowed down significantly, but it's remained elevated, so it's still, very high when we go out to bid, and it's just really a lot of uncertainty out in the market still. I do list here some of the cost drivers that can influence what, the bids are, and I do want to really emphasize that this is a look back. It doesn't reflect the current market's bidding environment, nor does it factor in potential tariffs or economic uncertainty. So as we move forward, part of that funding, part of our funding strategy with construction projects, is really just to prioritize and focus on those must-do priority projects, which were the big 6 over the next couple of years. So moving on to general fund revenues. So this is a snapshot, compares the history of our general fund revenues going back to fiscal year 21-22. One second. Yeah, so before I dive in on this, it's a very high level overlook of our general fund revenues. We are gonna get into some of our big 4 tax revenue sources here in a little bit more detail. But overall, we are looking stable. There's no new revenue sources assumed or significant revenue losses that's forecasted in this model here, but we do expect some leveling off but moderate growth here over time. So that leads me to the property tax. So this is our most stable revenue source for Goleta. It's composed of 4 major categories that make up this entire property tax revenue number. It assumes the 2% CPI to the real property value. That's the maximum inflation number that's authorized by Proposition 13. The assessed values are based on a lien date as of January 1st, 2026. And then include another big portion of this revenue source is the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees. That's the VLF. We estimate based on a growth factor of 3.31%, and that's the change in the net taxable value citywide. And so we do work with our consultants on these estimates. And so again, it's subject to further refinement, but this is kind of what we're seeing in the next 5 years. I did want to point also that's included in here, and that we also experienced in the previous years record high documentary transfer tax. That's when you have sales of property. We did assume back at a relative lower value amount, about $150,000, as sales. There's less volume of sales and transactions just due to the higher interest rate environments and also low inventory. So we don't I guess, forecast that higher than what we experienced in the last couple of years. Sales tax. So this is the 1% Bradley Burns sales tax. This is the sales tax rate that is subject to the revenue neutrality agreement. So if you recall, city receives 70% of the 1%. 8 major industry groups support this sales tax base, with general consumer goods being the largest, generating about 25% of this revenue source. Now, our forecast does not account for any new major retailers or any loss of major retailers, but it does include some assumptions just based on continued growth with online sales. It does factor in the local economic environment, including information that was provided by our sales tax consultants. But again, we do see some pullback on spending. There's just an increased activity with consumers spending more on experiences. So you can see that the slight growth rate, but not so much there. Transaction use tax. So this was our Measure B. This was the new tax that went into effect January 1st, 2024. This effectively made Galilea's overall sales tax rate at 8.75. Fiscal year 24-25 was the first full fiscal year. You can see that we've reached about 12.3 million. Still a new tax. We just recently recovered a large one chunk of back tax payment from a major retailer. We're still continuing to work with our auditors on some of the other large businesses in the area that we believe that we are also owed back tax. And so more information will come on that in the future. But just to put this in perspective on the long-term horizon, again, just kind of moderate growth. Still, and we're still working. We're going to, still working with our tax consultants on fine-tuning those numbers. But this is what we expect to see over the next 5 years: about 12.3 million, 12.6 in the next couple of years here. Transient occupancy tax. So this is the city's largest tax revenue source. It's also the most volatile revenue source for the city. Our city's hotel tax rate is 12%. It's supported by now 9 hotels and then also various short-term vacation rentals. The hotel room supply is about 1,300 rooms. I did want to point out in these numbers, it does include the TOT that is generated by the short-term vacation rentals. And of that amount, about 2% of the TOT revenues is accounted for or generated by short-term vacation rentals. So not a lot. But what I did want to say that this is kind of the most difficult to forecast. We do take in some input from Visit Santa Barbara and working with some of their staff on some of the projections. But then we also do a real look of what's going on and what we see in our data. And what I just want to point out, what we've been noticing, that there's actually been a slight decrease going on with our occupancy rates. Higher average daily rate, but occupancy rates have been decreasing. There is a hotel that I'm just aware, actually just was made aware about. Interestingly enough, I learned it on Instagram. It's doing some renovations, so we saw slight dip there. But we also are seeing that there's business travel. There's less business travel that's happening in the local hotel area. So it's something that we're paying attention to. But again, we do expect our TOT to kind of remain around that $14 million mark, and something we'll continue to analyze. And I want to say it does not account, we don't account or assume any additional revenues from major upcoming major events, let's say like the World Cup. We'll smooth out the average. We'll do the trailing 12 months, just so that we can get a baseline focus of what's reasonable and expected. Okay, now I'm going to move on to general fund expenditures. So this is a very high level total general fund expenditures of what we can expect. In the assumptions, we did assume about a 3 to 4% salary and benefit growth. Operating maintenance, it ranged between 2 to 5%, just depending on what it was. So again, we did assume status quo service levels, so no changes to staffing levels. And then we actually included additional slides here, just talking about our staff, our personnel count in the next few slides. So I'll get there in a little bit. We don't include any unfunded priorities and programs, including the backlog of deferred maintenance is not factored in. That, that's with your pavement maintenance, the concrete maintenance program, the affordable housing, the contribution, the tree maintenance program. So there's, if you recall in previous budgets workshops, we did have information about some of the backlog. And so we'll continue to have that discussion at future budget workshops. But again, what we're seeing though is that if you just look at the growth rates of what we're projecting is, expenditures will, it's anticipated to exceed revenue. About fiscal year 2029, there's actually a chart that shows that. But the major cost drivers, I would say we do have a very large contract with our sheriff's office, and there is a fixed kind of growth factor that is also subject to change depending on their DSSU with their union. But right now we assume a 5.7% over the long run. So personnel summary. So this slide here just highlights going back to fiscal year 18-19. And I showed that number I wanted to show where we were pre-pandemic levels. And then I remember we all had that conversation where we just had so much to do and get caught up and needed additional staff to address workload capacity issues. But also you got to recall we did take on the library fiscal year 18-19 for Goleta. 19-20, we assumed the direct management of Bealton and Solvang Library. We also formed the General Services Department in fiscal year 22-23. And just so a lot of activity there. And then we also assumed direct management of the Goleta Community Center later that fiscal year. You can see the growth over time here of where we're at. And I want to mention it does not include city council, commission members, or hourly part-time staff. So this is your full-time equivalent. And I guess one key thing I should mention too, what's kind of different when you compare us to other cities is that when you look at salary and benefits relative to other cities, because we're a contract city, salary and benefits is about 35% of the general fund budget. So personnel summary by department. So this just kind of gives another snapshot, but a kind of more in-depth look on the growth of departments. What's circled here or highlighted here in the blue is just kind of the net new full-time equivalents over a 5-year period. So this is the cumulative growth rate. So we just kind of show that down by department. And then on the bottom, there's just that annual change overall. Okay, now moving on to this next slide, which consolidates the revenues and expenditure projections. And really what I wanted to highlight here is that you can see by the third year, fiscal year 2029, the expenditure line is crossing the green line. So expenditures will be exceeding revenues, or it's anticipated to by fiscal year 28-29. Should there be any increases or additional program expansions that have additional costs, we're going to need to have an offsetting reduction or some type of new revenue source to support that. So I think key forecast findings, takeaways from this, our revenues are going to be growing, modestly, supported by our transaction use tax. We have stable property tax. Expenditure, though, is rising faster than revenues. Just again, based on the current assumptions, we're likely to exceed revenues beginning in fiscal year 2029. That takes me to this next slide, the general fund balance and reserves. And so we actually added additional slides to kind of highlight or showcase how this functions. It was mentioned in a previous quarterly report that we were able to set aside one-time funds of $7.1 million. And so that's what I circled here in blue, and that's what makes up that number. So that number will stay in there one time until it's appropriated. And so one of the things that we wanted to get in front of council is, hey, you remember we did talk about the Big Six projects. We were able to find that one-time fund balance, getting council consensus and let's go ahead and program that out in the upcoming budget so that way it's appropriated. And so that's for the Big Six CIP, and I do have a slide on the Big Six again as a recap, but also $1 million set aside for the Shelby agreement is also factored into that $7.1 million. I did want to point out too, though, the unassigned fund balance is projected to enter negative territory by fiscal year 28-29. And so that's something we're, again, watching closely. So that leads me to this next slide. So this is what it would look like if we appropriate that one-time $7.1 million. So again, like I said, it's a one-time fund, and so then it drops your, that other reserve fund balance down to that 3.9 million. So those other reserve categories, that's with your building maintenance, capital equipment, the compensated leave, risk management, your litigation, defense, is all lumped up in there. And then that yellow line, or that yellow bar, is our contingency reserve. And then there's a table I included here so you can kind of see it more detailed on the data of what it kind of looks like on the unassigned fund balance. So when that unassigned fund balance goes negative, what that really means is we're just going to be taking from our contingency reserve just to balance the budget. Okay, so that leads me to this next slide, is kind of getting more into the contingency reserve. And so I summarized the policy that we have in place right now, and just wanted to kind of highlight here. So we do have a policy that was adopted, I want to say back in 2012, maybe, so it's the 33% of operating expenditures, or essentially 4 months. Its intended use is for immediate funding for disasters and emergencies. It helps with operational continuity. It shields the city from services, tax delays, economic downturns, provides liquidity on delayed grant reimbursements. There is a provision in there that allows us to use up to 1/3 available for capital or revenue enhancing projects, along with the repayment plan. And I want to, just kind of mention that there has been a couple times that we've actually borrowed from the contingency reserve. We did a formal borrowing back in 2019 of $10 million when we purchased the City Hall building. And then there was about a $1.5 million borrowing in 2024, and that was actually temporary for 6 months, and we were able to replenish that, and that was related to the train depot. But I did want to mention that's kind of not necessarily always transparent here. It really only shows up in our quarterly financial reviews, and also when we do our audits. We do a temporary borrowing as well with the other funds, and so it's really a liquidity issue that we have with grant funds. And I took a look at how large that's grown over time, but on the average annually, every 5 years, it's been about 6.1 million. That's technically doing an indirect borrowing from our general fund contingency reserve. So that's when you have these large grants that you're awarded and you're still waiting for reimbursement. And so I did want to point out there is a project that we do have out there. It's actually, I think we've talked about it maybe the last city council meeting, but it's related to the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program project, the RCP grant. So that's another multi-million-dollar grant that hasn't been fully signed or finalized yet. My understanding, though, is that we can spend, but until it's signed, we won't get reimbursed. But it's likely, as soon as we start charging against it, we would need some type of the contingency reserve or some type of extra liquidity to help backfill that until we are reimbursed. And so I just wanted to point that out there. That's probably our biggest risk factor, just being a smaller city. We don't, as a contract city, we don't have utilities or enterprise funds that we can draw from like other larger cities that have, or full service cities. Okay, priority CIP projects, the big six. So this is just a recap of the project. So that includes what you guys received an update on Project Connect, and then also with the Cathedral Oaks crib wall repair. But again, Goleta Valley Library, so that was actually just funded recently when we just did that appropriation. And then the San Jose Creek Fish Passage Modification Project, and so that's another must-do project. And so we do have that funds set aside. And then again, there was that additional $1 million that was set aside for the Shelby agreement, and so we do have that right now temporary set aside until we know the final numbers on that. So potential unknowns and fiscal issues that are under review. So we just wanted to list here what some of the things that what we're facing. Again, elevated economic uncertainty, state budget, unfunded mandates, potential litigation impacts. Still a little bit unclear on the regional event impacts that are coming up in the long run. And then development impacts that are outside of city limits, and then staff and consultant capacity. Some of the fiscal issues, I was hoping that I would get ahead of it at this time, but some of the things that we're looking at right now is the library funding, because we do know there's a general fund component, and we do know that the library does heavily rely on the special taxes, but at the same time that, if you guys recall, we did have those one-time library DIF funds, and there was always a comment that's always made at one point in time, those DIF funds will run out, and it will need to be a continued contribution from the general fund will need to offset it. We also have the future sheriff contract costs that's going to be subject to either renegotiation or extending the contract in regards to that 5.78 rate. The future animal services contract, future labor negotiations is coming up. And then really just understanding the impacts of deferred maintenance if we continue to defer major, whether it's facilities or road infrastructure. And then also understanding the long-term operation and maintenance for new infrastructure, and that's what we're actually going to get into here in a little bit about funding priorities. But before that, I just want to remind everyone, major financial commitments. So again, with our current contract, we see annual increases on public safety, about 700 to 800 annually. You recall we did issue bonds, and so the 1.1 million from the general fund is going towards those bonds for the project proceeds. And then sales tax revenue bonds, Measure A. So about half of Measure A, 1.4 million, is going towards the debt service that's related to funding San Jose Creek multi-purpose path. And so that does eat into funds that could have been available for other transportation projects. So just wanted to remind of the council and the public of those commitments we've made. So funding priority areas. So really the way this is designed, I just really wanted, so there was no surprises coming up this budget cycle, but making sure everyone's aware, our main focus is funding, ensuring the Goleta Train Depot operation and maintenance and correct, truing up the operating budget. And then also same with Splash Pad. And I did want to point out too that another area that was on our radar here is the Heritage Ridge Park Project, CIP, and that's something we're going to be truing up the CIP numbers. It's going to match the Quimby funds that was put in. But in that, there was also a series of other agreements that were made on funding source or funding mechanisms that the city would commit to, including establishing some type of trust fund of like $250,000 with a match. There was also a commitment of $150,000 related, I believe, to some store and drain infrastructure. And so we're still kind of going through it, making sure we capture all that. We talked a little bit about the Big Six, so that's where we want to make sure council's on board. We're going to move forward, setting aside and make sure we have enough funds there. Then again, if there's additional one-time monies available after that, the thought process is here getting consensus or feedback on is it going towards pavement maintenance and the concrete program, and also the tree maintenance program. But also, if you recall, we did have preliminary discussions, and it was mentioned with City Council last year, but then further discussed the framework with the Finance Committee this past December on the funding a facilities capital and building maintenance reserve. And so that's currently under review. The same with our pension and other post-employment benefits liability. That's also under review. And then we'll get to another slide, but I just want to point out there was, when we adopted the budget last year, in order to make it work or balance, we did a temporary deferment of $250,000 from the general fund to the housing and lieu fund. It was discussed, though, if there was additional revenues or confirming if we're not able to restore it, I just want to make sure, council's aware of that we're going to recommending continued deferment of that $250,000 from the general fund to the housing and lieu fund. So with all that said, I know it's a really tight budget, but there are budget balancing strategies, short-term solutions that that are currently in process. Well, we do have the DIF Nexus study update that's coming to the City Council here pretty soon. We have the updated cost allocation plan and comprehensive user fee study that's in Finance's work program. And so what that will really do is just really inform, our updated cost recovery rate. And then we've been undergoing some tax audits, specifically on cannabis business tax. I should have an update for council here in May about the results of that audit. The next is we're going to start with our TOT audit and then pursuing back tax on the short-term rental operators. So that's in process. Expenditure reduction. So we've did some of that. We just talked about the temporary general fund contribution. Midterm, long-term solutions, so invest in economic development efforts. And so I put that on here because there is that economic development strategic plan, and in discussions with the economic development team or staff team, there is some ways to kind of recapture some development activity one-time revenues, and so we're looking to that. That really has to deal with large construction projects valued over $5 million. And so the way that works is it just really depends on how they're purchasing or buying their materials. Essentially, you can work out an agreement where the tax that's generated from those projects doesn't go to the county pool, it goes directly to Goleta. And so we're gonna look at that. But again, that's one-time revenues. We have a fee study update in process, looking at the solid waste fees, street lighting, and stormwater. And so that just kicked off with the Public Works team, I just wanna say last week. And so more to come on that in the few months. And then again, there's also, we could also evaluate potential revenue enhancement options to the general fund, evaluate special financing districts. So that's just put on here just, as some ideas here in the long term. And I did want to mention, though, we are continuing to pursue major grants. So that's still another budget balancing strategy. But so again, further updates, though, will be provided at the upcoming budget workshop in May. Budget strategy, so I did touch on a little bit about that. So part of it, though, we do want to start setting aside funds for our facilities and building maintenance. So we'll actually have a more detailed discussion of that when we go through the budget workshop in May. And then also the funding policy for Section 115 trust, pension, and retiree healthcare costs. We'll have an update on that. I want to say next city council meeting, when we do take our audit report, there will be updated information on our pension liability and OPEB liability as well. And then I guess I want to also comment too, just so that way, if things were to get worse, if there was a significant economic downturn, you know, there are cost reduction strategies that we've identified, that was identified actually during the pandemic. We have a 3-tiered approach, and it's kind of like winding things down, and then also, you know, relying on the contingency reserve, but before recommending any significant cost reduction, like or job cuts or anything like that. So there is an approach that we do have, but we're not recommending any of that. We're not seeing that in the data right now, but I just want to let council know we do have something like that available. So key takeaways: general fund is, you know, spending really cannot outpace revenues in the long run. We are going to be focusing on those big 6 projects. We should start funding, you know, reserves for our maintenance and liabilities now. We'll just again discuss that further. Any new program project service level increases should require an offsetting reduction. Otherwise, we'll just headed towards a deficit sooner than later. But again, without permanent reductions in the long run or revenue enhancements, maintaining current service levels is anticipated to be a challenge in fiscal year 28-29. Okay, so to wrap up, you know, we've outlined 5 questions here, and most of these questions are actually things to think about as we go through the budget process. It's not necessarily looking for feedback, but there is two major items here. We're looking for council feedback or consensus, so we can build up the draft budget accordingly. And then for the others, again, you know, looking for any early flags you may want to plant now. But with that, you know, we can take questions, or if, you know, if council wants to weigh in on any of these.
Thank you.
It's not on. Councilmember Kasdan.
Thank you. So first, I was curious with the big 6. So how much in their schedule is either A, in the short run constraining, and we have deadlines we have to hit and we don't have flexibility in terms of stretching anything or anything like that? And conversely, at what point is it going to be done, and any money that we were taking from the general fund or other sources that are flexible, we would be freed up, and now, you know, we can use it for other things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can't speak specifically on those timelines, but from a finance and bond perspective, we have a 3-year timeline to spend those bond proceeds. So everything needs to be complete by 3 years.
Okay, so based on the bond, they are all going to be done in 3 years.
The major
essentially.
Cathedral Oaks Crib Wall should be. In the event there isn't, because if there's delays, there is a way to reimburse from other transportation projects like Project Connect to get funds back, but the bond proceeds do have to be spent 3
But
years.
all of those aren't part of the bond, are they?
No, so not all of them. Let me go back to that slide.
I didn't think, oops.
Yeah, so Project Connect is part of the bonds. The San Jose Creek multi-purpose path, the Cathedral Oaks Crib Wall repair, and the San Jose Creek Passage modification project is not. So then you got the Goleta Train Depot. Goleta Train Depot is actually eligible for the bonds if needed. So we could technically, if there was like, I guess, a delay in construction schedule or something was pushed out, you know, that's an eligible project. But it's anticipated to be complete, I believe, this year, because we are talking, you know, about the operating and maintenance budget, and that's what is our main focus actually in this current budget cycle.
Looking at this, I would think if we need revenue, we can make the Fish Passage a toll a toll road or something and charge them as they come. But it would be, if we, I don't know how much, if any, sort of either general fund or other funds that are coming from specific fund sources that now will be freed up as a result in the next 3 years. That sort of information, that would be interesting to know. You know, how, because you're identifying 2029, I think 2028, 2029 is this nadir of funding, and how those two line up. Could you also, since you're here, go to the inflation, construction inflation? Oop. Yeah, and I was curious. So 52% it's increased since the pandemic. Can you recall offhand what the change in cost has been to achieve our pavement condition index target from, you know, let's say, I don't know, 2020, 2022? You choose a recent year to now, and how much that, what inflation that has been.
You know, so that's a good question, but I don't have that exact number. But I do know that our Measure B, the way we designed it and why we went for the full 1% was to generate that additional revenue from the general fund. So at the time, it was I want to say about $6 million that was needed back then to fully, you know, fund our pavement program. And then from last year's budget cycle, I want to say it was to meet the PCI goals. It was about $18 million in total that was needed.
I thought it was 18 million, but at a lower PCI target than our original one. Not our original, but the original revised, and it was something like 25 million. And I was just, I've wondered what accounts for that dramatic increase. So my recollection that it was something that before, like in 2022 or thereabouts, it was on the order of 4.5 million, 5 million to hit our target, and then, you know, a scant 3-4 years later, it was 18 million to hit even a revised target. And that's, you know, a lot more than just a 50% increase. And it just, you know, kind of makes me, you know, is there any solution out there? And I brought this up to Public Works before, and they're looking at strategies, but we, you know, this is ridiculous. If we can't, you know, even the inflation rate, which is extraordinary, is insignificant relative to the challenge we have with pavement. The other thing, do you know now at what point, what is the cost to hit our current PCI target, and how much are we putting in the budget for it?
Yeah, so, Mayor Perotti, Councilmember Kazin. So we'll actually have further discussion on the pavement budget that in the upcoming budget workshops. But as of right now in the forecast, we assume the same $6 million annual funding.
Okay, so we are not coming close to hitting our target right now. You're just relying on the special funds to do it? And are you relying on any general fund money?
Yeah, there's a little bit about, I want to say a little over 3 million, 3.4, maybe closer to 4 million from the general fund. And then the rest is coming from small portion from Measure A, gas tax, and then SB1, the road maintenance rehabilitation account.
I mean, essentially, you know, as you well know, with each year that we postpone deferred maintenance, the costs essentially are going to, you know, multiplicatively increase, making it more and more challenging as we fall further and further behind. And, you know, I look forward to the future discussion, but not kind of referencing this is one of the big challenges we have, and that the park, the Heritage Ridge Park is the upcoming challenge we're facing, but not pavement. You know, I think we're missing something important. I just think it's something we should be reporting. We should show we have this challenge, and not to sort of bury it.
Yeah,
If
no,
I could
that's
jump
good
in,
feedback.
I was going to jump in on the question that led up to that statement, Councilmember Kasdan. So the question about kind of speculation on what has led to the cost increase. And again, just using the rough numbers of the number that was provided to the council, say six years ago or so, was 5 or 6 million to get to this PCI. And then the number you saw last year, which I think Luke is correct. I seem to recall it was around 18 million. So again, rough numbers, but you're looking at the percentage increase in construction index, and that doesn't account for that increase. If we assume 60% or so over that span, then it shouldn't have gone up as much as it did. I'm speculating a little bit, but I'll give two other possible reasons for that, and we can certainly, when your Public Works Director here is at the workshop, they can also speak to that question. One, I would say, is the last 3 years of rains that we've incurred. So, as you know, we go through rain cycles and drought cycles. If we go into another, say, 5-year drought cycle, the PCI is not going to go down at the same clip that we've seen in the last 3 years. So we've had 3 years in a row, maybe even more, of over average rainfalls, and we've seen the damage that's done to the streets. So that's just one speculation that the last 3 years, these numbers on PCIs, they average everything out. So they include drought years when the paving, doesn't get worse. And then the other piece and there's an article that Ms. Buelna just recently sent to me, really interesting, focuses on the city of Los Angeles and their paving struggles. Really interesting article. I do plan to send it to the full council. I just haven't got to that yet. There's a lot in this article with similar challenges, but one point it made, and we've experienced the same thing in terms of on our most recent paving projects and what we include in the paving project. 5-10 years ago, cities generally, paving projects were done separately from concrete projects. You had a concrete program, fix the sidewalks, put in accessible ramps, and you do that as much as you can, and you pave and just try to get streets paved. Now, through some court rulings, you have to do the ramps when you pave. And so you probably saw that on some of the streets that we recently did. Berkeley is a good example. We just didn't pave the streets. They replaced I don't know how many, 15 access ramps. And so that's adding to the cost. That's included now in the cost of paving. I'm speculating a little bit to answer your question. That's making we used to be able to pave more streets because we just paved them. It was just asphalt. Now we're doing the ramps and all that at the same time because there's been these court rulings that you have to do that to comply with the ADA when you do your paving maintenance program. So just to try to answer your question, what explains it going from approximately 6 million to the 18 million that you saw last year?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I look forward to seeing the article. I was wondering if it was because we don't get a lot of bids. There's not, so unlike some other types of projects, there's 1 or 2 bids that we get. This is just one plant. But if we can ask Rory, I forgot his first name, but our pavement guy, if we're able to kind of separate how much are the ramps that you're describing versus other things. Let's see. I had a couple of other questions. One is with the train and aren't we going to try some sort of user fee, franchise fee arrangement where the concessions and all the things that we provide are going to help pay for the cost of the maintenance?
Yeah, that's a
operation?
good question. I'd like to invite our assistant city manager.
Right, we have a visitor.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. There are a number of revenue tracks we could pursue. We're looking at those, one of which is the concessionaire agreements. We don't know exactly how they'll be responded to in the first year or so. It's a lot of build it and see if they come. I think the news also about the changes in commuters, maybe not coming with Metro Link being, I don't know if it's discontinued, but paused. But then Amtrak saying that Pacific Surfliner may fill that void. So that's one aspect of it. The other one too is pursuing the charges for parking in that facility. We're working with neighboring jurisdictions to see what might be a good use for the city to have that be a revenue stream to help offset O&M costs going forward. So we don't want to count too many chickens before they hatch, because we'd have to get authority from council to actually charge for parking, which we don't currently do, and that would be a different model going forward. So those are all discussions that are happening now. And then also there would be investments in parking, ticketing machines, and that sort of thing. But from our experience and conversations with jurisdictions, that's an initial capital outlay that those machines tend to last quite a bit. But we also have to make sure that they're operating and not leaving people stranded behind some sort of a barrier. So I think one way to explain it is we're showing more or less the worst case scenarios by showing what the expenses are and not necessarily counting any revenues before we know what a better sense of those would be.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer.
Thank you. I was just curious, you had that fee study, the various for solid waste, stormwater. There's never been any opportunity to have a pavement fee of similar, that does something similar? Because
Yeah, no, that's
no law, there's no opportunity?
Yeah, there's nothing I'm aware about. But it's, something we can talk about. I was going to say, I do know the full service cities that have utilities, they're actually able to recover some of the impacts to the roads by charging against their utilities. And since we're a contract city, we don't necessarily have that.
Oh, so they have the opportunity to charge against utilities, you say, in order to recover those costs for the roads, and we don't have that? Huh. I wonder if there's something, okay, because that would be helpful. One last thing, and that is I handed out, and there's one by the door as well, this is the list from advanced planning. That is their projects that they had the table 3, which I didn't hand out, were the ones that essentially are mandated by the state, where they have some sort of obligation to do. There's not choice involved. And this one is the list that has the ones that essentially we discussed and we added. And the thing I wanted to point out is a couple of things. The primary thing is that the first one on there is something that yet has not been done. So we went through a considerable amount of discussion about how high or low each of these items should be, whether we should move up this one or move up that one, and there's no capacity in advanced planning to do any of them. The one at the very top, which will become relevant in the succeeding months, it hasn't been initiated. And so what I'd like to see is that one of the items that you look at, one way or the other, is to increase the capacity of advanced planning to do some of the projects that we identify. I mean, today, for instance, we were talking about Old Town and the Equa Fowler, and we've got on here, Equa Street extension rezone, the La Patera specific plan. We've got things that we've talked about before that we think are valuable to do, and they're not going to get done. There's nothing on here, essentially, other than the ones that are mandated, 17 and 18, which will rise to the top. But the things that we've proposed or we think are helpful aren't going to get done. So I would ask that one of the items that's included for us to evaluate and consider in the context of the budget is adding some additional capacity. Now, I don't know if it comes out of how you get there, from current planning, from, I don't know, wherever. But somehow, having a long list and where none of it's going to get done, that's not right. Okay, those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kiriakou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some questions. but I guess first a statement, you know, and I can start with pavement. I mean, I think the only thing I can say about the pavement program is, you know, thank goodness we've now had 2 years of Measure B revenue, because where would our pavement be without it? The last 2 years, how much has the city spent on pavement? I want to say we were able to get it all in from all the different sources, closer to being an 8-figure investment, but I don't remember the exact figures. Does anyone have the exact figures? I wanted to say it was like 10 million on average the last 2 years.
Yeah, I don't have the exact figures, but I do recall, because money was rolled over, that the last project was over 10 million. I just can't recall the year before. I think the year before was maybe more in the range of 7 to 8. So
Okay.
if you add the two together for a 2-year span, yeah, something like that.
So
But
it's-
we'll certainly get those numbers, and we can provide those in one of the budget, you know, one of the meetings that are coming up.
Yeah, thank you. I think that would be helpful, because I think, you know, kind of to some of the points that have been made earlier, and I think as has been acknowledged by staff, road maintenance and infrastructure maintenance generally is a concern and is a priority. And I think it's important that we make sure that as we're looking to the next 5 years, that we are properly managing and looking for opportunities to increase that investment whenever practical. But my first question is about the relationship between the pavement program and how it's bid and the California Construction Cost Index. We know from one of the earlier slides that for a period of years, the California Construction Cost Index went up so much it almost looked like kind of like a hockey stick graph, where it just skyrocketed and increased the cost of construction in so many ways. When we look at the cost of the pavement program, is CCI something that plays into how the bids come to us and how much how much it costs to do pavement year over year, or is that really just more environmental factors?
Yeah, I was gonna say not necessarily. This is kind of again the CCCI, the specific one that we're showing is taking the average, you know, 2 different areas, Los Angeles and San Francisco. Being in Goleta, it's more localized, and so, you know, Public Works can speak a little bit more to that about the bidding environment, the also the environment too that impacts.
But I think the last year just recently, I think we found a situation where we are able to actually add some additional projects to what's going to get done, because we had money left over in terms of what the bid came in, right?
That's correct. And Councilmember Carriaco, I would just add to your question about this index. I don't know exactly what is included in this index, but I think it's probably some combination focusing on building construction and other types of heavy construction. And so, yes, there would be a correlation between this index and one that's more specifically to paving, but paving is going to factor more on the price of oil.
Okay, thank you for that. So I guess my next question is, when we look to the 5-year forecast and we think about things like sales tax and the transient, the TUT revenue, some of the major categories that impact Goleta and whether or not Goleta does well is car dealerships. And I'm just wondering, you know, when you look to the future, you know, we've had some changes in that kind of Hollister Avenue, South Kellogg area. You know, there was used cars being sold right there at the corner of Hollister and Kellogg, and that's not currently happening. The Nissan dealer isn't running right now. I'm not sure if that's being used for storage for Toyota or if there's sales happening on that lot. But, you know, what do you see in terms of the performance of our sales tax and the performance of our Measure B tax as it relates to those factors, that industry?
Yeah, so great question. We actually just had our recent sales tax update with our consultants, and so without naming any specific businesses, but that particular group, the autos and transportation, it's actually it actually leveled out a bit. Meaning, like, I was actually expecting a decrease, but it's staying fairly stable, but what's interesting about it, on the forecast side, they are anticipating lower rates, and they are anticipating that there's actually a huge market of, I guess, cars that are in the 12 to 13-year-old that are going to need to get replaced here.
Okay.
So they are saying it does look stable from our sales tax consultants.
Okay.
And then with transaction use tax, I did want to point out that's a little, it's kind of difficult to, that's one of the major differences between those two taxes, where the transaction use tax applies to those that live, we get the tax allocation if you live and register your vehicle in Goleta.
Yeah, I was just going to add, what's also occurred over the last several years is that there have been sales of these car dealerships and under new ownership without, indicating one or the other. There have been investments and there have been increase in sales for the ones that, so in a way, some of the ones have performed better than they had before, which may explain part of why the change hasn't been as drastic as we might think. So I just wanted to share that for a long time, I think 30 plus years, they're basically the same ownership, and there's been change over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And it does appear there could be some redevelopment happening that might make those spaces, even more attractive and might, bring in more buyers potentially.
And there's been one that, combined another brand with the original brand. Would be hard to tell, but you could see it. But those changes have also occurred during the same time period.
Okay. Also want to talk a little bit about gas stations. So gas stations are another source of revenue for the city. And it seems like in the last few years, we've had a number of them closed, particularly in Old Town. The one at Kinman and Hollister was closed for a while. Now the one at Hollister and Rutherford's been closed for a while. And I know, periodically you need to do environmental repairs and clean up and all those kinds of things. But do we have any reason to believe that there's additional closures for remodeling or repair or remediation or other reasons why any other gas stations might go offline?
That's a great question, but nothing that I'm aware about. But I did want to comment though about some of the stuff I'm seeing in the data, and also talking with our consultants. I do pay a lot of attention to our gas tax, and then just with the rise of electric vehicles continue to increase and fuel efficiencies, and so there is less. I guess get the gas tax revenues look really flat. There's no growth there, and it's not keeping up with the amount that's needed for our pavement program, but also with gas prices too. So that does affect some of the revenues that's being generated.
Okay. And then I want to talk a little bit about hotel revenue. So, we don't have a lot of hotels as a city. I mean, if you just count them up for a city our size, certainly not compared to neighboring cities. But one good thing that we do have when it comes to our hotels is we have a good diversity of price points and styles and brands, and a lot of kind of well-known loyalty brands that attract, rewards members and that kind of thing. On the higher end, we were fortunate for a long time in our city that the Miramar was closed, and there was a while where San Ysidro Ranch was closed. Miramar's back open as I forget the name of it right now. San Ysidro Ranch is back open. Biltmore's been closed for a while, but my understanding is in the next couple of years, they're going to be doing a partial reopen and then a full reopen. Have we, in our projections, taken into account additional competition coming in market from neighboring jurisdictions for the higher end market?
So great question. In the base case, we do not take that into account. In the worst kind of case, we do make assumptions, but it's something that we're, keeping track of.
Okay. And then what else do I want to ask about? Let's talk about the county for a little bit. So, we're a zone library provider. So we serve Buellton, Solvang, the San Ynez Valley, Isla Vista, and of course the greater Goleta Valley area in the city. And, we were able to do that and serve that larger population and provide great services for our residents at the same time, in part because we have a partnership with the county. And one of the ways that manifests itself, I know you mentioned earlier the DIF fees, but one thing we perhaps could talk a little bit more about is what do we see as the short-term and longer-term outlook for the ability of the county to continue providing significant county general fund dollars into local libraries via their per capita. Have we received any indications from the county that they're, starting to plan for a reduced per capita or a flat per capita in terms of what comes into the library system?
So again, yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually see if our assistant city manager can answer that one.
So I think it was a December, the second meeting in December, we signed the 25-26 fiscal year agreement between us and the county. And we actually had a modest growth in the per capita amount. I think it only went up, might have been 10 cents or so. But we were actually expecting it to be either status quo or go down. So since then, I know there's been more and more news about the county's fiscal position. We haven't been alerted to any changes predicted so far. We actually did and were able to secure an additional $130,000 in DIF money as part of the library project. So to Mr. Rio's point, we haven't got that indication. The most recent example of it has been actually a slight uptick.
Okay. Okay, so that's helpful because I know one thing the county had been concerned about for a number of years is whether or not local jurisdictions were investing in their zone libraries, and Goleta really does strongly invest in the library. So I'm hoping that we can maintain that existing partnership and not see significant reductions or additional reliance on the city to make up any gaps. And then the last thing I wanted to ask about was affordable housing, just in terms of, thinking about I believe it was a recommendation that we just keep status quo in terms of, continuing the deferment on the affordable housing funds. How much affordable housing, based on our previous investments and other policy decisions, deed-restricted affordable housing are we expecting to go online in the next few years? We would have Heritage Ridge. I think that's a little over 100 units. I think it's 102 units of deed-restricted. Are there any other deed-restricted units coming on the horizon within the city? Shelby, okay. How many is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna see if anyone else might be available to answer that.
Councilmember
I think it's
Kiriakou.
10 or 9.
Yes, I believe it is. I'm searching to be sure, but I believe it's either 11 or 12 units out of 56.
Okay. All right, so if we continue deferring, at least we can rest assured in the knowledge that there are significant increases in affordable housing on the horizon in the city, and that's based, at least in part, on investments that we've made and policy choices that we've made. Okay, that's it for me for questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Reyes-Martin.
Thank you. Well, just to start, I want to say how important I think this conversation is, and I'm really glad that we're kind of kicking off the work plan and budget discussions with this bigger picture, 5-year look, because then we're able to not look at the next year kind of in isolation of that. And I really want to encourage us, as a council, this is, probably the most important thing that is our responsibility, which is to steward the financial health of the city. And as much as possible, we should dialogue with each other and come to either a council direction or consensus on things that we want, staff to evaluate or tweak as we get into these next conversations, because we're gonna have 5 different opinions about what we should do, what to prioritize, what's important. There's obviously gonna be some overlap, but I think in order to make it most productive for staff, I think it's really on us when we're here in chambers to dialogue with each other on what that direction should be. I think some of the questions I have, I had, even when we had our, pre-agenda meetings, the deferred maintenance, and I'm so glad that at several points in your presentation you mentioned that, because I think it is so important and prudent for us to really take that really seriously and think about how to plan for that, especially as we have aging infrastructure of our facilities, and as we continue to acquire new facilities, we're going to have a new train depot, we're going to have a newly redone library, we've acquired the community center, we have, we've expanded the footprint of our ownership of this building. That all, I know that it's not factored into your model, and I think it should be in some way. And again, that's an I statement. And it's probably not practical to have like the full, here's, a full deferred maintenance cost. That's not practical even with your own home, thinking about the list of deferred projects. But there should be some factoring of that. And we as a council, I think, should be planning for that, whether that's a reserve or some other mechanism for that, because we're going to have things that are going to break, things that we have to fix, and I'd rather have planned for it than everything be an emergency or an urgent kind of action. So that's my comment on deferred maintenance. And I'm glad you also touched on the maintenance and operational costs of facilities. So I'm glad you're thinking about that too. Those become ongoing costs that we, of course, have to factor in. And as we, acquire new things or open up new things, that adds to that ongoing cost. I think, Councilmember Kazan and I have been on the absolute same page about the importance of pavement. I don't think it's practical that we're going to be able to, meet that 18, or I think it was even more than $18 million a year target. But I do think that $6 million is not enough, and it's not gonna help get us to a better place. But that's a discussion for us to identify what is an achievable target, what can we do to have some more in there, and to Mr. Ryu's slide on 24, what is the offsetting reduction? Those are hard discussions for us to have as a council. We can task staff with bringing some options, but we have to be in alignment that that's what we want to do. And I think that has to be the discussion as we think about any new things that we want to do or new priorities. We have to have that hard discussion about the offsetting reduction, because what I think is a silver lining of where we are right now is we have our very capable professional staff telling us we're in a good place right now. We've got a plan for finishing these major projects, and there's some pretty serious caution ahead. And I think that's it's a good place for us to be in right now, to think ahead to the next couple of years and how we avoid finding ourselves or a future council finding itself with a budget deficit or some more challenging times and not having planned for that and not having anticipated that and made some choices or some changes or slowed some things down or not taken on new things just yet until we really see what a lot of this economic uncertainty plays out over the next couple of years. So I'm, on that note, kind of glad that we're having this discussion now, and we can really take the time to think through some of these important questions the staff has outlined for us. So, I guess one of the unanswered questions I had that's maybe more clarification is, when you talked about, the deferred maintenance not being factored in and any staffing changes not being factored in, there was a comment, and I think it might have been in the staff report, about unfunded priorities and programs. And I just wanted some clarification on, is that talking about anything that's unanticipated that could come up that would be an unfunded priority or program, or are you referring to any known unfunded programs or priorities?
So the unfunded priorities and programs is really referring to what we know, what exists. That could be like some of the master plan documents.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
So like projects that are in there that we've, adopted as plans, but maybe are not
Right, it's a
budgeted
priority
right
to
now.
complete, but
Yeah.
there's just no funding mechanism to identify. I'll give an example, like the Economic Development Strategic Plan is one. And so I've been working with to identify one-time funding sources that we could, like that construction use tax, as a possible one-time revenue, avenue, but just kind of stuff like that. But
Yeah, and that's really important for us to kind of reckon with that we have a lot of really great plans that we've adopted and we're excited about. We know are important, our community knows that are important. And so then I think the discussion for us is, what do we do knowing that? How do we make decisions about what we do? Where do we find the money? And then have staff come back to us with some options. Those are tough, discussions to have. But I guess, like, in fairness to staff, like, we are the ones that have to have that dialogue about how do we get there? How do we achieve some of those things? Or do we change the timeline on some of those things? I'm sure there's various options that if we give direction to staff to, they would come back to share some of those with us. That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Yes, thank you. Just thinking about a few things, and just clarifying that we're sort of in question stage right now. Okay. Thank you. I think I do think continuing, I guess just I guess this isn't really a question.
Don't worry.
I guess in response to,
Yeah.
But, we are a unique city in terms of like what buckets we have for funding. And I understand our need, maybe more than other cities, to be conservative in terms of our contingency target. The more I look at it, I do sometimes wonder if even some small percentages of that contingency policy could be adjusted so that, right, like a percentage is going towards maintenance or things like that. And again, not large percentages, but I don't know. And I recognize that has to be a cautious discussion, but it's interesting to see that major uses of dipping into it have been more kind of for the liquidity purposes or for acquisition of the city hall. Unless I'm not hearing as much of like we had this emergency need to dip into the contingency. So historically. So it might be helpful to just continue to have that discussion and to maybe, have more information there. And I know at the Finance Committee, the discussion will be ongoing in terms of thinking about maintenance, whether it is our and I think both in terms of our buildings and the unique aspects. There is no question that owning a building as old as the community center or being responsible for, Stowe House, right, as we have seen, has some really unique challenges that are just different than, even having a building from the 70s, which still also presents challenges. So that's just something that comes to mind. I do think it will be important to monitor, I think in the coming year, in terms of just the rental market and the actions of the city of Santa Barbara in terms of any policy decisions that they make, because it will have market impacts on city of Santa Barbara tenants if it hasn't already. So I think that's going to be something that's just important to monitor and a reality. And then the other observation too is thinking about impacts to UC Santa Barbara. just thinking about, to the extent, if they're facing shortages, funding cuts, and to the extent our economics are interrelated with, if there's fewer business trips for UC Santa Barbara related business, that might be impacting Goleta, and things like that. So those were just some observations. I won't go deep any further, but those are some initial thoughts.
And Madam Mayor and Councilor Smith, I do have just one comment, and yeah, risk of going kind of down that rabbit hole on reserves. And of course, reserves has been discussed at the Finance Committee, and as Mr. Rios said, it's in progress, and so there's going to be another item to both look at the general reserve and that policy, and also the newer idea about a facility reserve. But one misconception that I just want to kind of pop a little bit on the idea is that it's not an ongoing source. It's one time. So I'm just looking at raw numbers. I'm looking at 26, 27. The reserve is estimated at 15.7 million. That's 33%. So hypothetically, let's say a policy was changed to make our policy only 25%, or let's say that was $2 million. So okay, let's only have a reserve of 13.7 million. That's $2 million. Then you could use it. Next year, the reserve's still going to be 13.7, but you don't get another $2 million. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's understood. Thank you.
Yeah, and don't we have a policy, I'm going to jump in here on our reserve, and that if we were to use it, well, first of all, 33% has been the operating expenses, or the amount put away for 4 months. But if we were to use any of that, don't we have a policy that we're supposed to pay it back within a certain amount, put it back into the reserve? I mean, it's not just you use it and then not refund it. Is that, am I thinking that?
Yeah, Madam Member, that's correct. Within a 5-year replenishment plan, we do have to cut or figure out a way to replenish it within 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The only other thing I was going to add is Mr. Nisbet, when you make that point about the reserve and reducing it, it's kind of a double-edged sword. As you have more expenditures, you have to put more away, right? And so you also have to factor that in, because you're thinking like, oh, great, well, like we have more in reserve, but it's also because you are spending more. So that graph and those totals, I don't want to say are misleading, because they are what they are, but they kind of create a false sense of like, oh, we're getting more reserves, but it's only because you're spending more.
Right. And then at some areas, jurisdictions like to put away a 6-month reserve. I mean, I remember there being conversation of like just doing a 3-month reserve or a 2-month, and council members in the past have always like held that in high regard, that we'd have at least 4 months. I think that was always been the case for a long time. I do say I want to agree with Councilmember Reyes-Martin on a deferred maintenance. I do worry about how to keep up with all our beautiful buildings and property that we own. And I think those will be some tough conversations to have. But past council have done an excellent job with, always being fiscally responsible and conservative with the funding. And I think we can do it too, but it's going to be tough. We all have our wish list of things we want, and so, but I guess I'm not asking a question. Well, I do have one question, and just random, but the train depot, so it's the sidewalk and the bus loop and all that, is that included in the full, it says it's fully funded, is that included, or is that going to be separate?
Madam Mayor, so as you recall, when we went to construction to bid the documents, we bidded them with alternates.
Mm-hmm.
The site-specific improvements are being done as part of the base project. We're moving forward with that. What we did extricate from it was the South La Patera improvements, including the sidewalks as you go from Hollister all the way, ensuring that they're all, universal and consistent, as well as redoing the road and dealing with the bike lanes and all the other stuff. That was all extricated because that wasn't part of the grant. So we've made that a separate project in Public Works to see if we can find grant funding for that type of project, because it has a good nexus for connecting, transit-oriented development and transportation hubs as that. But yeah, they are separate.
Well, it kind of came up today at my MTD meeting, and they were wondering if, there was going to be some kind of a loop or something.
is.
There will?
Yes.
That's already been.
Yeah, that we included that because that has to service the actual,
Thought so.
the depot, but the wider, or well, not wider, the longer extent being from the site all the way to Hollister.
Yeah,
Had to
okay.
be phased out.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kasdan?
Yeah. It's quick. So, one of the reasons I didn't sort of intentionally do this to set up this observation, but looking at, the discussion that we had as far as the escalation of costs associated with pavement, it's going to be a challenge. Thanks. I guess, when people look at a question, ask us about, or when you have the discussion about revenue enhancements, part of what people are going to ask us is, didn't you already do this? Didn't you have a revenue enhancement Measure B in the past? And you said it was primarily for deferred maintenance, or at least that was a large driver of what you were proposing. And so how do you justify something like that if we do proceed with a revenue enhancement or consider a revenue enhancement in the future? And presumably, we could look at the Measure B and see, here's how much of that is going for various deferred maintenance purposes. But when you look at the escalation in costs associated with pavement, it's something beyond. It's something that, it was not when it was the time for us to be doing, predicting how much we would need for pavement. We thought 4.5 million, or 4.5, something like that. We would need a portion of that Measure B money to go in and from the general fund to augment our fees, and there's been a change in the requirements, there's been a change in the need, and it's really put us in a really challenging position. And so it's something that we'll have to think about. We'll have to ponder, what are the options that are available and so forth. But, honestly, if we're talking, how do we come up with $15 million or something like that on a year? It ain't there. It's just we can push a little more money in from here and there, but we're not coming up with that. And we could set a new goal, a lower target, but there are consequences to having a lower target in terms of the deterioration of the roads and the long-term costs. So it's just an observation that, it's something we'll have to talk about and something for the public to consider. And hopefully there's a variety of different revenue options, some less egregious or onerous or something like that. One last observation or question. I believe I know the answer, but the $11 million associated with, I forgot the name, a DOT grant, was that your question? Sorry. Do you want to finish it?
No.
I can. That is not programmed into this because there's uncertainty, and at a future date when we have certainty, we can decide. I think we talked about before, a portion of that going to pavement, a portion of that for Big Six, but could you elaborate on that money?
Yeah, Mayor Perotti, Councilmember Kasdan. So that grant, that RCP grant, so that's a special revenue fund. So it's not included in the forecast essentially, but it's part of the overall project cost budget for the San Jose Creek multipurpose path. The latest update I received on talking with Public Works is that that grant has not yet been signed by the Federal Highway Administration. So therefore, we can't, again, submit for reimbursement, but the budget is programmed. It is programmed there. So we're able to spend the money now, and still get signed agreements at a later date, so this doesn't impact our ability to get reimbursed, though as long as we actually get signed agreements at some point. They let me know that the Federal Highway Administration is understaffed. There's a lot of new team members, so things are taking a lot longer. They're also in process of revising their agreements, so they've been waiting for their final language. No official timeline just yet, but we're continuing to follow up.
Councilmember Kiriakou?
Yeah, I can still kind of finish my thought on that one. So you did a good job of starting us off, and I guess in terms of a question, but perhaps trying to be responsive to some of the provocative questions and challenges that have been put forward, one way that we could look at this in terms of thinking about the future is, as we find ourselves being assured enough that that money is really going to be there, we could schedule regularized conversations for when we're able to draw on that grant for the San Jose Creek multimodal path project, to then trigger a conversation about what would be the appropriate reallocation of general fund dollars that have been kind of suspended and hanging up there. And in terms of putting down a marker and dealing with the provocative question, I would argue that we should, as we look at the next 5 years, schedule a series of conversations where we could potentially put that money towards pavement, just to kind of put down a marker of where I would be thinking, not putting it towards Big Six, but putting it towards pavement. I think that's one way of getting there. I think another question for us to consider in terms of trying to be responsive to what was brought up earlier, I think we need to look at what would we like to do, what would we love to do, and what do we have to do? And some people get the joke. I heard a giggle. And I think that we should be looking at our discretionary spending. What are some things that, even if we have master plans focused on it, what are some of the discretionary things that we perhaps didn't do 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but we do them because they're very real needs in the community, or important priorities for our community, but perhaps we need to pause or reconsider the amount of the investment towards fulfilling those plans over a 5-year period, over a 3-year period. Perhaps we staggered in over the last 3 years when it looks like the unfunded would start to, the unassigned fund balance would start to zero out. Maybe we could basically look at a plan for those last few years where it's supposed to zero out. Perhaps there's a way for us to look at 2 or 3 discretionary, not things that we are mandated as a city to do, but that we like doing and they're priorities. Maybe we can reevaluate some of those priorities. And I don't want to necessarily name each of them right now, but I think it's something that we have to look at. I do agree we have to make some challenging decisions here in the near future. I think, I think the present is fine, but I think there's blinking lights about the future. And so it's appropriate to start heeding those blinking lights and having a plan for how are we going to address those blinking lights. So I think there's no bad ideas right now, reassessing our reserves or reassessing the rate at which we reimburse the reserves if we have to dip into them. That could be part of a path. There may be some other ideas. Maybe there's 1 or 2 work plan items that are not so far along that there's a lot of sunk money in them that we could just kind of put on pause. But yeah, I think this is a good conversation.
I'd like to go to the public, but before we go to the public, Mr. Rosen, City Attorney, would you like to make a comment?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to make an announcement to any public commenters we may have on the line that this item is limited to the 5-year forecast and fiscal year 2026-2027 budget priority setting workshop. So to the extent there's comments not related to this subject matter specifically under consideration, that's irrelevant speech is not permitted. And it's just a warning that to the extent we have public commenters that speak on irrelevant items not related to the item, they will be muted.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any public speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and council members have not received any speaker slips. If any attendees on the Zoom webinar wish to speak to this item, please use the raised hand feature and I will call upon you. Mayor and council, I'm seeing none.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like we have a couple, do we have any more comments from Mayor Pro Tem? Did you have something you'd like to say?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to thank staff. I think this is a really helpful overview. You know, I don't know that this is the year, but in looking at this 5-year forecast, it does raise the question for me of like, should we look at I don't know, the TOT tax at some point, or, in terms of starting to think about revenue enhancements, and thinking about that. I see that on the horizon. And then, and I think it's not so much a concrete, budget item for the current fiscal year, but I do think sort of underpinning a lot of the activity in our city is knowing, right, we have our own developments, housing developments coming online in the city. We have the county's activity right at our borders. And that, I think, is just continuing to drive a lot of discussions. I'm thinking in particular about fire service on the western end. So, and I think that remains a high priority as we look at this, 5-year planning period. So I just wanted to flag that. I know at this moment, there's transition and negotiations and discussions still happening, but I think that's just an important in thinking about the forest through the trees looking ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like you're looking for there's two questions that you want us to, number 3 and number 4. One is the in-housing lieu fee contribution. And then the other one was the, does council support staff recommendation on overall funding priorities? It sounds to me like we were all in agreement, but I'll just ask Councilmember Kasdan.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really clear on 4, because seems more of an aggregate report rather than, where we would weigh in on. Are you asking really about like the big 6? I mean, because we clearly identified something with pavement for future discussion and other things. Is it really just we get it that here's the revenues and expenditures?
Yeah, we didn't, the approach was we didn't want to come to council with surprises of like, because we don't have formal appropriation authority, like that's a significant amount of money. But we wanted to make it clear that when you do see the upcoming budget at the budget workshop, you'll probably see that those projects fully funded, the Big Sick. Well, pretty much it's going to be that San Jose Creek fish capacity project, and then so I wanted to point out we do have pavement maintenance concrete here too. So if we do identify the additional funds, it will be a priority item we'll look to fund. But also, really the focus though is what you're going to see new programs in the budget is the Goleta Train Depot operations. So it's going to be housed in general services, but there's going to be multiple departments touching that budget, and then also just right sizing some of like splash pad operations and maintenance, and then. In keeping in line with the agreement we have in place with Heritage Ridge, there were some costs that were identified that we said we would come back later, and so we want to make it very clear so no one's surprised by some of that. But we do know we're stretched thin, and so, we're going to continue to make some adjustments because we know there's some contracts that have to be slightly adjusted, but just wanted to, these are kind of the items, the big picture items. But again, it's something to think about too when you go through the work program process, and just kind of giving a heads up of where we're at. So it's just kind of getting that general consensus of, but if there's anything else, again, there's more opportunities at the future workshops too to provide ongoing feedback. But really, I'll go back to that affordable housing. I just want to make sure everyone's clear that we're going to continue that deferment.
Right.
If council's okay with that. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
And certainly the council could make a motion, but I think it's also acceptable just to see the head nods and get concurrence, and I think we've received that.
Okay. I just want to thank you, Mr. Rio, for an excellent presentation and did a good job of putting it all together and making it, explaining it all. So thank you. There's a lot of work put into this. Thank you. So do we need a motion? We're not needing a motion. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay. Then I think,
Oh,
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm sorry, council comments?
Yes.
Yes, I have a few.
Oh, okay. Is that what we're doing now?
Oh,
I didn't realize you'd called that item yet.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think it's
seeing-
next. But.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought, when you said
Well, actually,
comments, that's what I thought.
Council comments
I
and standing
apologize.
committees, yeah, so
Gets to be Mayor Pro
we're
Tem.
ready to move on. Sorry. No, that's
Like a
good.
two-day talk.
That's good.
I have
Help
a
me
council
out here. Go right ahead. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Apologies, sorry. Yes, I just wanted to report back on a few things that have happened since our last meeting. So I did attend the Beacon beach erosion meeting, and I know that there was information shared from the county about the activities happening at Goleta Beach, which is under the county's jurisdiction. But and just make people aware that the benefit of that project does help shore up Goleta Beach, and also helps in terms of flood control. That it's maintaining the flood control, and all of that material is moved to the beach, and it helps protect the beach. So I know that Supervisor Capps and Public Works with the county has shared additional information that is available, but that has started, and that will be ongoing for several weeks. I attended on January 27th. I attended the soccer match at UCSB, the U.S. women's soccer team, and just as it informs, I think everybody had a great time. It was really lots of fun. I just note that I did hear some concerns about parking and the time it took for people to leave the event. Somebody said it took them an hour to leave the parking structure. So, so to the extent that we are involved with ongoing planning as it relates to World Cup activities, I just think that'll be important. Even though that's not directly within our control, to the extent that we're partnering with UC Santa Barbara in that effort, I think there were some lessons learned there. But overall, lots of fun, had a great time. On January 30th, I joined several of my colleagues here in a press conference regarding ICE activities. And that was really moving, and it was great. There was a lot of students out as well, and that was really incredible to see our youth being active and engaged on these issues. And then just this Monday, I attended the Athletic Roundtable's luncheon with women in athletics and was really inspired. I did not play high school or college sports, so I was just really impressed to be among all these incredible athletes and was very inspired. So that's my report. Thank you.
Councilmember Kiriakou?
Thank you. Yeah, just two quick updates. One is on Saturday. We had our first of the year coffee and community event at the Goleta Valley Library Express. It was very well attended. It was very well put together. Thank you to Kelly Hoover and her team for all the work that they did, putting that event together very quickly and very effectively. And I really want to thank Elizabeth Saucedo and her staff at the library for everything they did. And we had an opportunity for people to ask questions of myself and our new Chief of Police Services. There were a lot of questions about immigration. In fact, it pretty much dominated the Q&A, and I wanted to make sure everyone on council was aware of that. People from all different walks of life and all different kinds of backgrounds really just seemed to have that on their mind. On a related note, I also attended the press conference at the county courthouse. that was dealing with ICE and the importance of trying to work to de-escalate law enforcement actions that are happening federally in our community, and was really proud to see so many community members there, and it was great to see all the junior high and high school students from Santa Barbara Junior High and Santa Barbara High, my alma maters, come marching down to make their voices heard, and it was really great.
Okay, I just want to make everybody aware, if they're still listening, that we have two committee meetings coming up this week. We have the Public Safety and Emergency. I have nothing to report on it because we're doing that on Thursday, 12:30 to 1:30 here at City Hall. And then we also have the Homelessness Issues Standing Committee, 12:30 to, no, must be 2 o'clock to 3:30 or 4, I can't remember. So, yeah, I just put that out there.
It'd be awesome.
Okay, any other reports? Nope, then I think this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Did they talk about?